Welcome to episode 70 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and this week there was quite a bit of shake-up in the top 8 once again. Again, all these teams now really vying for literally every spot since the top 2 has opened up. We could see another potential fallout with the Dogs maybe coming back in. We will talk about that as we get through this round. And a couple of big losses from some of the more poorer teams, which were kind of expected against who they were playing, but still a bit of discussion around them. We will jump over to that. But first of all, how are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Sort of just shuffling back into things. I think I said last week that I'd shifted a few things around because I was sick at the end of last week. The week before, sorry. And then I just had to do everything, and now everything's sort of back to normal, back into
Excellent.
routine. Had to go out in the fairly inclement weather over the weekend. A very rare rainy weekend in Perth, but
Oh, yeah?
apart from that, yeah, took it fairly easy. Watched a bit of football, more on Sunday, more than Saturday, but kept up with everything and ready to dissect as we get closer and closer to the finals.
Absolutely. It's gonna as we approach we're up to 3 rounds left now. So it's gonna be crazy going into these last couple of weeks. My week itself, not too bad. For those unfamiliar, I ran a Overwatch charity tournament over the weekend. We raised $2,300 Australian for EDS, which was very good for us. And one of our dear friends was having to be part of the winning team of the entire tournament. So congratulations to them. It was a lot of fun. HSP are going to be taking a bit of a break now from things, just to give our production and our producers just a bit of time off as they work on some other stuff, life things, etc., etc. So we're just going to be chilling for a bit, planning for the months ahead, but otherwise just working on stuff in the back end mostly. In terms of other things, footy on the weekend, I'm looking forward to this Saturday's game against St Kilda. We will talk about that, of course, when we come up to it. But yeah, there's not really too much going on right now for me. So, shall we just jump straight into our first bit of news?
Yeah, it's a bit of news before we head into the game. Absolutely.
Yes, we are going to start with the sad confirmed retirement of Callan Ward after doing his ACL about 2 months ago.
Yeah, it'll be about right.
Do you want to start?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought that was the league. No, so I was saying, Callum Ward is a bit of a fitting game. Well, not game, he didn't announce it during, but afterwards, for Callum Ward to retire, because obviously he started off at the Bulldogs. Fairly high round draft pick, pick 19 in the 2007 draft. But really got off the ground running. Heavily utilised in his first couple of years, and was looking to, I think he was a captain. Wasn't he the captain in 2011 once he went? That was a fairly big deal.
I
Uh,
cannot remember. It was so long
anyway, I'm
ago.
not sure if he was ever captain, but the Bulldogs were fairly crap, and they were sort of lowballing him in terms of money. So he decided to go for the Giants, who were offering him nearly double what he was getting at the Dogs. So it was like, yeah, I'll go there. And I think he would be right now. I know you could probably make the argument for Jeremy Cameron, but just for his longevity and playing nearly what would it be 280 odd games for them, probably their most iconic player.
Yeah,
I
I'd
would
say
say
definitely one of them.
maybe
At
Toby
least
Green.
I'd say at least top 3 minimum. Toby
Yeah,
Green would
exactly.
probably be number 1, I would have to say.
Yeah,
And then I would say
just
Callan
because.
Ward and then maybe Cornelio.
Yeah, yeah. I still attribute
Or
Cameron,
Phil
but it's weird.
Davis.
I always attribute. Yeah, maybe. I always think of Phil Davis as a crow, but I'm slightly older than you, so.
This is true.
Yeah. So in terms of Callum Ward, what was he known for? It was some very, very good ball use. Normally on the outside, occasionally in the inside midfield. I think he spent a couple of years attending centre bounces in the mid era of the Giants when they were starting to first compete between 2017 to 2019. Um, Obviously, unfortunately, missed a chunk of football in that time period of 2019 and 2020, and then came back, played more of an outside role, and honestly, the ability to play such a solid outside game and still be very much involved in scoring opportunities, transition of play. It was just one of those players that pretty much encapsulated what the Giants like to do, and that was move the ball very well on the outside. And yeah, he was a very, very solid contributor. I wouldn't say he's like I'd say he's a very occasional goal kicker too. I had a few double-digit seasons of goals, but sort of just one of those players that was very handy to have around. And yeah, could do a little bit of everything. Again, a bit more of an uncontested than a contested player, but still someone that you could always rely on. Just had a lot of effective disposals and was absolutely clean.
Yeah, he became one of the best on ballers at the Dogs at the time when he started. Unfortunately, the Dogs were not that good back then. But he became one of the bright stars of that team. And again, he did get a little bit lowballed, which is why he went to the Giants and became such a core pillar of their growth, especially as they were introduced into the AFL, and then steadily became better than their expansion counterparts in the Gold Coast Suns. Granted, they got much better picks at the time and much better players at the time. But the fact that they required so much veteran talent to really shape the young core that they had accrued, Callan Ward and Phil Davis being two of the main ones that came over, made such a massive difference. And he just let his football do the talking for a lot of it. When he gained the captaincy for this club, he did he have the captaincy? I'm pretty sure he did at some point.
Oh, he's the inaugural captain.
That's right.
Yeah, that's being able to confused. I'm not sure if he got an early captain at the Bulldogs and then continued, or if he was just given it at the GWS. I'm not too sure.
Not entirely sure about the Dogs, but the fact that he was able to bring in so much leadership already to such a young, growing team and pretty much just shape their entire 2010s. So the fact that they made it to a grand final before the Suns and even, kind of surpassed Fremantle in expectations in that time, because Fremantle was slightly on the up, or also still fairly crap as well. GWS surpassed everyone's expectations essentially, and it comes off of some really strong leadership, some really strong just football from Callum Ward, the other veterans that were involved, and the core young players that they grew, such as, for an example, at that time, Jacob Hopper, Tim Taranto, obviously now at the Tigers, Toby Green, Tom Green, Himmelberg, sorry, Lockie Whitfield,
Jack Steele.
Jack Steele was there for a while. There was a ton of players that had come through there. In the late 2010s that really made such a huge impact. And then obviously they had their brief dip in 2021-22. And now have come back really strong. Obviously played finals 23, played finals 24, and are looking likely to once again play finals 25. Whilst he may not be a leader on field, he's already confirmed he's going to be doing a lot of off-field leadership, helping out with coaching as well, and it's going to be huge for them with this momentum going into September.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I mean? It's one of those things where I think he probably knew it was time. Again, 35. Although players can extend careers, it's very hard from a ACL to come back at that age. And you also got to consider your quality of life. He was obviously an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. So theoretically, he could get picked up by another club. You wouldn't think it would happen. Because I think he's just said retirement, last game for the Giants. But no, he did say retirement.
Yeah, I think it's official retirement. It's an ACL. At 35, it's
Yeah,
pretty hard to
no,
come back from that.
yeah, I was gonna say. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it for unless there's anything you want to say before we salute him off.
Um, no, not really. I just think that he's definitely going to be one of those players that are really, really going to be missed just in the football community as a whole, just because of what
Yeah,
he brought to the game. Especially once he was at the Giants, and the fact that he was such a hero to a lot of young Giants fans, or
yeah.
players, or like people who were familiar with AFL but didn't really have a team and kind of wanted to root for something new. So, with the Giants coming
Mm.
in and their slow and eventual growth, either out in Western Sydney or otherwise, um, a lot of that is attributed to just the way that he helped shape them on field.
Yeah, and as I said, it's just that difference between their recruiting and thing. It's like that big splash for Gary Ablett Jr., where, as I said, Callum Ward was targeted obviously for his level-headedness, and at the time, very young player, who was very big-bodied and much suited that growth as a team. So,
Yes.
as I said, fantastic player, an example of fantastic recruiting, and probably one of the first real career players for GWS, to start of, well, not start, but you know what I mean? Like, that has had a very obvious start and conclusion to his career there. So, yeah, yeah, I think a lot of people will be nostalgically sad for that retirement.
Yep, I completely agree. So, in that case, we salute you, Callan Ward. Thank you for your services to the AFL. And with that, we do have to cover another retirement, sadly, with Rory Atkins announcing earlier last week.
Oh, we're going to do that straight away? That is no problem.
May as well.
Well, as I said, it's a bit hard because it's like you could do it during the power game, but it's not really a Port Adelaide player. 2 games there, obviously part of that stake deals, and a bit of a more maligned player, maybe not as became a bit of a meme at the end of his career. But we got to go back to 2012 and round 4, pick 81 was his national draft. So a player like that, you're looking at an average of maybe 2 games, and
Yeah.
he has managed a 140 game career over 3 teams. And I think the biggest thing about Rory Atkins was how solid he was at the Crows. Like, he wasn't a flashy player, he was definitely more a part of depth. But for such a low pick, they struck gold, and that's how good teams, which they were for a majority of that time. I don't think they dipped in from 16 to 19. Or might have been 19, but anyway. Yeah, so as I said, very solid player, averaged about 20 disposals a game. Relatively good user of the ball, maybe not as silky smooth as Callum Ward, but still play that outside. He was very versatile. Sometimes played forward, didn't average too many goals, but sort of a link-up sort of player, and could also play on the wing before eventually he was sort of more repurposed for a couple of games for Port Adelaide as a rebounding defender. Average 6 rebounds 50s a game for Port Adelaide in his 2 games, which is a bit funny. But yeah, as I said, but really, as I said, after he sort of found himself on the fringes, a few other people coming up from behind him taking his spot. As I said, he was serviceable, not 100% best 22 player. Yeah, the Suns offered him a lot of money to go play there, and they didn't really use him at all. Whether it was just, as I said, management or falling out of favor, or I don't know what happened, but yeah, as I said, it was absolutely baffling what the Suns were doing with him. Ended up getting traded to Port. It was a pretty open secret that it was a salary cap dump, and yeah, Port Adelaide just used him for a bit of depth. Obviously, Port Adelaide didn't push, so they didn't really feel the need to use him. But ultimate professional. Whenever I saw him on the socials, he always seemed like he was You know what I mean? Like, he was always in and around, being a part of the club. Apparently a very good lower level player, and as I said, a bit of a leadership for the younger players coming up. So even though he didn't make the impact on the field, he probably had a bit of follow through effect for the young kids that were playing. And you know what? Honestly, as much as it was a bit of a joke that he did get traded to the Power as part of the state night deals for Lukosius, I really think that you need to give a bit of respect for his career, because it's very hard to get in, and it's very hard to make a name for yourself when you are such a low draft pick. But he just went in it week in, week out. Got to play for a few different clubs, and managed to last nearly 10 years. Oh, actually, exactly 10 years in the system.
Yeah, he had such an interesting career where I think after the fallout of the 2017 grand final and all of how 2018 unfolded for the Crows, I get the feeling like he maybe at the time just wanted greener pastures, like just something different. Because we all know the Crows weren't exactly the same team they were going in from 2017 after that. So I think going to the Suns was good for him, but the fact that they didn't utilize his skill set when he could have been part of a difference in pushing that team closer to finals sooner than what they have been. Hindsight's 2020 after all. But always so reliable. He was one of my favorite players to watch at the Crows when he was there. And it's just unfortunately he couldn't get as many games as he did at the Crows across the other clubs. Would have been nice to hit 200, but time makes fools of us all sometimes.
Yeah, and it was also to remember, it was at that period where the Crows were trying to turf out a few of their older people. I know Atkins probably wasn't that old to be that, but they did the same with Hugh Greenwood. Anyone that they determined to be a bit more slower paced, not suiting their style. They made a few harsher calls during 2020, 2021. So, yeah, as I said, it was just one of those things where probably a bit unlucky to find himself out on the outer. Again, I still don't know what the Suns were doing picking him up. But you know what I mean. It's like, as I said, he was part of that Rory gang. That was probably one of my favorite things. Like, as I said, I wouldn't quite go as far as saying he's like one of my favorite players to watch. But Rory Atkins, Rory Sloane, and Rory Laird are all contributing a fair amount of good footy at the same time. And it was just shouting Rory at the TV over and over again. It was pretty fun.
And not to mention, you had both Matt and Brad Crouch at the same time. So you had a set of three Rorys and then two brothers.
Two Crouches, yeah, exactly. So, a lot of repetition down at the Crows. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about Rory. Again, not a player that's going to be too often remembered. Again, if you're doing your Gridleys, probably a good one for the multiple clubs.
Yes.
But, as I said, apart from that, maybe a fringe player, but we salute you all the same for your contributions to the game.
Absolutely. And I hope he has a wonderful retirement with his family. But without further ado, it is time to get on
adorable young baby as well.
Yes. But without further ado, it's time to look back on the weekend that was of footy, starting with our Thursday night clash over at Marvel Stadium with the Bulldogs and the Giants, an 88-point margin, with the Dogs taking it 19-18, 132 to the Giants 6-8-44.
So I might have been a bit wrong with my pre-round prediction for this game. Obviously, we talked about probably being the most important swing game for the Dogs, barring that obviously mouth-watering clash of the Dockers with round 24. But yeah, as I said, they went really, really, really ruthless against GWS. It was an absolute brutalization. And, they had their forward half bully ball. It was pretty much like they would do with a lower class team.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely smashed the clearances and inside 50s. It resulted in a monstrous 74% time of possession in forward half in the first quarter. So right from the get-go, they had their game on lockdown. Led to 10 forward half intercepts for 4 of their 6 first quarter goals, and it was a similar story for the rest of the game. Despite the difference in defensive quality, the Bulldogs limited the sparse amount of inside 50s for the Giants to very tough shots. O'Donnell probably having one of the best defensive performances of his young career on Jesse Hogan, who had 3 possessions and 0 marks.
Mm-hmm.
Well done to young O'Donnell there. Whilst Cadman and Riccardi did actually make the most of their limited possessions,
Mm-hmm.
It was just another pure win for the Davids up against the Goliaths in the Giants. And yeah, as I said, they were killed, so to speak. Speaking of the Tolls, Tim English probably had his best game of the year, in my opinion. Setting up a lot of clearance wins, marking on the outside as an offensive link-up player, and starting a lot of scoring chains while kicking 2-3 himself. With the Giants not having a good inside midfield day, they allowed a whopping 90% of the Bulldogs' first touches to be clearances, which means that the clearance game advantage was played out to maximum effect. They were absolutely trounced in that regard. It was dour.
They were. The Bulldogs played that game so clinically. It's like the Giants weren't even a top 8 team. Like that's how clean the Dogs were in this game.
Yeah, and it was like, I think it was the thing too, is like, you knew that the inside midfield versus outside midfield was a real battle. You know what I mean? Like, inside, obviously, Dogs had the advantage. Outside, obviously, GWS, you would think on paper would have the advantage. But GWS's movement was pretty arse too. Like, it wasn't just that. Like, they scored 3-3 off defensive half.
Mm-hmm.
They were only going from D50 to score under 10% of time, pretty much. Even both their defense, just moving the ball from defensive to forward 50, both of those categories are from deep and from just defensive half, the Bulldogs were better at. So really, even in areas where the Giants would normally be better, the Bulldogs were dominant. So yeah, it was just very disappointing.
Yeah, like you expected so much more out of the Giants, and like as much as we knew that, like obviously the midfield was going to be the hardest fight because Giants forward line for the most part has been really solid. We know the Dogs have a little bit of weakness still in their back line. The fact that it was just so clean, pretty much across the board for the Dogs. Like it's hard to really. Granted, Giants, they're meant to be a top 8 team. Like this is meant to be a much closer game on paper. But from the way the Dogs kind of just structured themselves against the Giants, it looked like there weren't any holes to really kind of poke at.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say with my second point, is that there was just no options for them up the ground, because the Giants, who are known for their back half movement, struggled, as they pretty much had the same problem the Doggies are normally known for, as they could not find marks. They could only find marks of halfback and nothing on the wings, which meant they were just chipping aimlessly a lot across their back half. And I will put a bit of a preamble ahead. I'm not saying these stats to say that these 3 had a bad game or that they were useless or whatever, but I think it was just how much they were held up, because Whitfield, Idan, and Lockie Ash all had a ton of the ball, but no one to go to, and they only start in a total of 5 scoring chains for their combined 88 possessions, or 6% possessions to scoring chain ratio, which is very, very much low, because they are all fairly above average. For context, Lockie Ash, 19% of his possessions end up in a scoring chain. Idan and Whitfield, both at 15. So, as I said, it's not the fault of these players, but sort of a reflection of the complete whole of their systematic ball movement and restricted flow from halfback. And again, when we're talking about the marking, like, yeah, sure, GWS had a similar, I think, amount of marks to the Bulldogs. Yeah, it was 99 to... In fact, they had more.
Well, there you go.
When you have a look at where they were, like Lockie Ash, 12, Lockie Whitfield, 13, Connor Idan, 10, Hammy Hilberberg, 11. They just weren't happening in areas where, as I said, Tim English was the most for the Bulldogs at 11, and they were happening all around the ground. It wouldn't surprise me if a high percentage of those, 40 odd marks came from each other's possessions. They worked the ball out, and again, I don't think it was actually the fault of those 4 players. They were just trying to work the ball, but eventually, when you muck around with the ball so much, kick it forward to a clanger sort of contest, maybe a ground level thing where the Bulldogs were dominating. They absolutely smashed on ground ball gets. Or you turn the ball over, where the Bulldogs do score greatly. They scored 11-8 off turnover. That's 74 compared to the Giants 3-4-22. And that's sort of how the Bulldogs get you. You know what I mean? They don't even tend to create that many intercepts themselves. It's just they will force you into those errors, and once they get it, they score so much from them. So, as I said, mucking around is just like the last thing you want to be doing against the Bulldogs, and that's what they were forced to do.
Yeah, the Dogs built such a strong defense across their midfield and their backline that they just completely shut down the Giants' movement. The fact that the Dogs forwards got involved in so much, especially Norton and Darcy, despite the fact that they're mostly meant to be, the spearheads that take all the marks to kick all the goals, the fact that they had insane tackling pressure and were able to even pick up so many balls off ground and be effective with them shows their versatility, even despite the leg injuries that they both had in the past. And the fact that the Giants' defense, normally known to be able to stop stuff like that, just didn't exist at all, is insane. And it's definitely something. And I know, obviously, they were
Buckley.
They were missing Jack Buckley, who normally does a lot of that defending off ground. Sam Taylor was still there, and felt like got nothing done, which is crazy. And it's definitely going to have to be something that Adam Kingsley really, really dissects.
I was going to ask you, is this like a situation? Because we've had it a couple of times. I said in theory it was the same thing that happened with when Ryan plays without Pierce. And I think obviously we've had conversations about May playing without Lever May. Is this a possible, situation where obviously Sam Taylor's had a lot of support around him, but maybe just having Leclerc as support, who is pretty much just okay as a defender. Like, he's got some talent, he's got a bit of growing to do, and there's been games that's been really good. There's been a few games, probably this one, where it's been a bit of a liability. But is that just too little? For a defense that normally has a bit more around them.
I definitely think it is that kind of situation because they've been so good together, Buckley and Taylor. Where I don't think it's necessarily that Buckley misses Taylor, because their defense held up pretty well without Sam Taylor when he was out with injury. But it's more that Taylor definitely misses Buckley. But we know, again, Leclerc, he's also, out of contract this year. We know he's got a couple of eyes at other clubs at the moment. I think he's a defender that the Giants want to keep and that they can add to their defensive lineup once he gets a little bit more game time into him, a bit more growth. But in terms of, like, how you fix that hole when one of your key defenders goes down, I don't know if there's an answer for that for them in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I think the difference between Aaliyah and Buckley is obviously, I think Buckley's just a better one-on-one defender. Like, as I said, Taylor is a good one-on-one defender that can, like, just steal intercept marks. Obviously, he couldn't against, Darcy, which is fine. As I said, Darcy has got some of the best hands of the comp.
He does.
But then you leave it to Leclerc, and then, 8 intercepts, but normally when Buckley gets it, he gets like 5 or 6 score involvements, but obviously for GWS, he only got 2. Again, their movement was terrible. I'm not saying he was the part in the chain where that broke down. Obviously, 91% disposal efficiency. It wasn't like he had that many turnovers, but you know what I mean? I think it's just I think Buckley just has a lot more burst. He knows what to do right after an intercept, and I think that's what they were also missing from there. Because as I said, they're your Iduns, your Iduns, Ash, and Whitfield are very, very good at the slow play. Even Ash specifically, he's not that much of a burst. He just gets involved in some burst chain. He runs with when Taylor. I'm sorry, not Taylor, or even Taylor or Buckley run off. So
Yeah.
sort of just left in the chip zone, where Ollie was doing was just that sort of boring uncontested game.
Yeah, they got
Again
pretty stuck.
not going to them because they needed, like, at that point, then you need to bring up players like your Callan Browns. He really couldn't get involved up ahead of the ground, even though that's who they did bring up at times. Your Ryan Angwins, who they're sort of trying to get into the game, or even Toby Bedford. When he's not having a proper tagging role, I sort of question why he's in the team sometimes. As I said, he's had good games this year. But I think his role's gone into a bit of free fall come the later passes this year. So
yeah, that's
a bit of a concern.
Definitely a bit of a concern. And like obviously they were missing Toby Green for this week as well. That leadership on field definitely affected them. But they should have enough experience without Green out there to be able to figure out what to do. Unless he's just had that much profound impact in terms of leadership this season.
Yeah, but as I said, it was just crazy how much like Jason J. Hannison looked more damaging than the Greater Western Sydney halfback line, and it's been a while since I've said that about Jason J. Hannison.
Yeah, JJ's
had a 2018 throwback.
He's had a pretty rough couple of years. Bit of injury, exactly. Bit of just out of formness, but
Yeah. But also I also want to just shout him out because he had a pretty good game.
Yes, absolutely, he did.
That's not for a while.
Speaking of, we may as well just jump over to our individuals, and I'm going to start with Marcus Bontempelli. The captain, of course. There were a couple of players I could have picked, but I think he had the most impact in terms of midfield time. He finished with 27 disposals, 25 of them effective, equating to 92.6% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 5 marks, 5 inside 50s, 9 clearances, 2 goal assists, 14 score involvements, 16 pressure acts, and 472 meters gained. Riley Garcia played a good pressure role this week, finishing with 15 touches, 8 contested possessions, 4 inside 50s, 3 clearances, a behind, 6 score involvements, 5 tackles, and 11 pressure acts. Then Aaron Norton, I had to pick one of the two. Aaron Norton just edged out Sam Darcy in terms of impact, kicking 5-2 from 20 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 8 marks with 5 of them inside 50, 13 score involvements, and 388 meters gained. On the GWS side, you did mention Lockie Ash before. He did repel what he could and was mostly effective with his disposal usage, but again, they just couldn't really go anywhere. He finished with 36 disposals, 29 of them effective, equating to 80.6% efficiency, 12 marks, 3 inside 50s, 13 pressure acts, 2 1%ers, and 685 meters gained. And Stephen Canilia had impact in the midfield in terms of just what he was able to do, finishing with 15 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 7 clearances, and 4 score involvements. Unfortunately, there was an injury for them this week with Toby McMullen going down with an ankle complaint.
Yeah, as I said, not much we know about that, but as I said, just another sort of outside player for the Giants going down. So again, it just didn't really help the cause. But yeah, as I said, the Giants have got to work on that because they're a team where, it's weird because they're a good outside team, but they have a lot of youth on the outside flanks. And I think it's that one area of weakness where their inside midfield obviously don't often win clearances, and their outside midfield are very young. So if they can't work out who to bring forward, they're just going to get some of these matchups and get absolutely blown out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump over to our Friday night clash over at the Adelaide Oval. The Crows are hosting the Hawks, and with a 14-point margin, Crows went out 15-11-101 to 13-9-87.
An absolutely intriguing contest between these two sides. It must have been an absolute rollercoaster of emotion for these two fan bases because it was defined by the abnormal scoring. Everything seemed to come in waves, and it all seemed to go to the Hillside, which got 23-13, 151 of the total score for the match, compared to the Riverbank end 5-7-37. So that's combined by both teams. All the score tended to go at one end of the ground. The initial lead, which obviously went for Hawthorn, who were kicking at the Hillside early. It was really a defensive lapse for Adelaide, defending off the ground ball. The Hawks Moles just simply got into the game too much and nailed all their opportunities early, as Adelaide's tolls were sort of quelled by the toll defensive lineup. I think initially Hawthorn probably would have taken their that as a win for the first quarter and a bit, but that didn't stay too true for long, because Riley Thilthorpe had absolutely awakened after the quarter time break and was helped by captain called Jordan Dawson having an absolutely mammoth second quarter, leading to their 8 unanswered goal charge, gave them a lead at halftime, and they scored the first goal, I think, of three-quarter time. But Hawthorn again, 5 goals, and it was their Smalls getting into it for yet another period. They were very solid in their outside movement during this period, with Moore, Morrison, Ginnivan, and D'Ambrosio all getting involved. However, this charge was just not enough. And whilst they did have some opportunities in the last quarter, I think it was actually relatively even in terms of general play. It was just the big swing of Massimo D'Ambrosio. Again, had a pretty solid game. He missed an easy set shot. Adelaide went coast to coast. And Sexy Texy has a little balk outside 50, kicks a goal, and that just sort of broke all Hawks back. And it sort of put their finals chances in jeopardy, because really both teams fairly efficient. Both teams repelled toll fairly well. As I said, it was just Adelaide just getting more better opportunities through what they were able to manage with their tolls, whereas Hawthorn were really just, whenever they could get the ball to ground, they looked good. But apart from that, it was a bit sporadic.
Yeah, it was a really weird game, and I don't know if weather was a big factor in it, or if it was just the way that the game kind of
Nah, it wasn't
flowed.
wind. Next to no wind.
Okay, that's interesting. But yeah, the fact that majority of the scoreline went towards the hill, like one end of the ground, is I feel like especially with no weather, it's a little unheard of, and I don't know. It was just I think it's just the way each team kind of structured themselves in between each quarter is the way that they kind of that kind of just ended up happening. Like it was what 5 goals to Hawthorn and the next 8 to the Crows in that end, or for the most part at that end.
I think it was actually.
And then it was
I think
like
it was
5 back.
6-8-5 by memory.
Fair enough.
It
and
was
then
something similar. Anyway.
it was just a weird arbitrary back and forth. And whilst we all love a good shootout, that's exactly what this was for the most part. It's like a little bit of superstition. The fact that that's just the way that the game kind of unfolded.
Yeah, and I actually think it's very weird, because I was looking through, it was sort of, just looking at off-related stats to go into a bit of a think about. But when I was looking more closely, these teams are actually very similar in style of play. And I think that's sort of dictated because there's so much overlap in how they wanted to play, and they both actually have a lot of their strengths, what they're good at doing is also sort of equal to what they're good at preventing as well. So they were sort of randomly cancelling each other out at moments, and I think that's why I had a very swing game. So I want to go through some of the stats that are very similar.
Go for it.
So both the teams we talked about inside midfield, not a huge factor for both these teams. They both have a net loss rate in stoppages. Oh, sorry, that should say. They have a net loss differential in stoppages, I should say. But both are 5th and 6th from scoring from stoppages. So while they lose the clearances, it doesn't matter. And in terms of preventing scores from stoppages, Adelaide are 1st and Hawthorn are 7th. So despite losing the clearances normally, they have very, very good shape. Both these teams love generating intercepts and moving the ball from the back half. Adelaide, of course, we've mentioned, are 1st in both of those categories, and I think Hawthorn are 2nd in intercept generation. The difference between these two sides is that Adelaide have a much easier time and hit rate exploiting the defensive chaos these opportunities present because they have the 3-toll lineup. And whilst Hawthorn definitely can, and it's not a weakness of them, they do rely on that ground level opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And it does give the opponents a lot more time to defensively set up, because if you have to bring the ball to ground, the play tends to stop. Like, you have a bit more time because you have to pick up the ball, collect, take your shot, rather than just a set shot that just happens if you get a mark inside 50 from a turnover. So that's one reason why I think that, it was a bit of, a momentum swing when Hawthorn were able to generate intercepts. They could, but just got a bit less out of them, whereas Adelaide got a lot more from set shots. And also means, as I said, because of the bit of the difference between the two teams, I think Adelaide, they just got easier opportunities as well. So 5 goals from Adelaide came from less than 10 metres out for only 2 for Hawthorn. And you know what I mean? In close games like that, the easier shots you can get, and this is true for finals as well, teams that can generate shots for goals don't tend to have accuracy woes to some of the more streakier teams that normally pop into the 8. So I think that bodes fairly well for them. Again, another thing that's very good, and as I was talking about, both these teams are first and second in terms of allowing marks inside 50. But as I said, it just goes to show how, probably how devoted these two teams are in terms of that. Because, you know what I mean? In that night, even though Adelaide had lower inside 15 markings than they normally have, because they're a very good team themselves at generating marks inside 50,
yes,
you saw how much value that Thilthorpe, Fogarty, and Tex was still able to contribute to the game, even though they were limited. So they were still getting marks, but even when they weren't, they were still providing that. Whereas as for Hawthorn, the combination of Mitch Lewis, Cal Shadir, who ended up getting subbed off, and Mabior Chol just wasn't even comparable. So again, I think that just shows where these two teams are. That's why I think Hawthorn are a middle of the pack contender. Probably could win a finals game. Could easily miss out on the 8 thanks to this loss. Whilst Adelaide, I do believe, have firm, legitimate claims to a grand final appearance.
Yes, I completely agree. And like, not just on top of that, because of Collingwood's current woes as well, which we'll get to, they have a potential grasp on top 2 as well, which is crazy, because no one would have really picked like a top 2 chance for them, like let's say 2 months ago.
Granted, they were bottom 4 last year.
Yeah, that too. In terms of Hawthorn, I think they can get the 3-pronged forward line, like tall forward line, to work, but it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen this season, because we know Mitch Lewis has insane talent. He just hasn't been able to, express it because of his injuries. Cal Shadir is still quite young. This is only his 2nd season, and Mabior Chol can be hot and cold. He just needs to find the right matchups to play on for him to be able to have huge, big amount of impact.
I just think the worry for them, it's coming out of sync at the wrong time, and it's not in the fact that I don't think they can come back from it. It's just Hawthorn seasons are on the line, and your tall forward line isn't working. And I don't really care how good your small forward line is. You still need some cohesiveness normally to make the 8.
Agreed.
And, as I said, when Hawks have a tough draw coming up, I really think it hurts their chances of even making the 8, even though I still think they can.
Yeah, I think it's entirely feasible that they could still 100% stay in the 8 and play finals. Honestly, if we're looking at it just in terms of the next couple of weeks, I think it's going to be between them and the Dogs as to that final slot, because the Dogs are still currently sitting outside of the 8 and are still a game behind to be able to get back in.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really, really tight race. I think in terms of the other 2 teams that are kind of sitting there, I think Freo are a little bit safer. Their run home, not too bad. They should hopefully stay in and play finals, unless Freo pulls a Freo and just suddenly chokes a random game. Could happen.
Yeah.
You never
Well, we
know.
said before, if they win their first 3 games, which they have, wait, no, yeah, sorry, no, they would need to win against
They need
Port,
to win this week
which
for
we
it to
talked about.
solidify.
Yeah. But as I said, it's two of the like they did technically have a wiggle room of one game. But yeah, as I said, if they win this week, it becomes more likely than not, even if
Yes.
they lose to the Dogs.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, it's why this pointy end of the season is actually so interesting. And it's the same as what we had last year, where the top 8 wasn't decided until the very final game. And we could have another situation like that this year.
It definitely could be. Yeah, for sure.
Well, granted, the final game of the season is going to be Gold Coast and Essendon. So it's not entirely, a big shake-up game. But, that final round is going to be huge.
Yeah, as I said, it's going to be very much a Western Bulldogs. If they lose, they probably don't make it. If they win, they probably do.
Yeah, pretty much. Shall I jump over to my individuals?
Yes, go for it.
I'm going to start with Riley O'Brien, because I thought he was very impressive matching up against Lloyd Meek this week. He finished with 43 hitouts, with 17 of them to advantage, and 18 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 8 clearances, and 8 score involvements. Dan Curtin was prolific with ball movement in that midfield. He finished with 20 touches, 14 of them contested, 5 intercepts, 6 marks, 7 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 5 tackles, 27 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 500 metres gained. And Sam Berry was also very solid with pressure, collecting 13 disposals, 5 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 9 tackles, 29 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. Over on the Hawthorn side of things, veteran Jack Gunston continues to be dangerous up forward. He kicked 4-1 from 10 touches, 7 contested possessions, 7 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. And then Captain James Sicily was solid all around the ground, finishing with 18 disposals, 17 of them effective, equating to 94.4% efficiency, 9 intercepts, 11 marks, with 7 of them being intercept marks, 7 inside 50s, 4 score involvements, 4 1%ers, 4 spoils, and 4 88 metres gained. Over on the injury side of things, Will Day has once again gotten injured. This time it was a bone stress fracture in his foot and has been ruled out for the remainder of the season, including finals. He's had a really rough break at it. This is his 3rd injury this season, so it's been really, really rough for him. We know he has a huge amount of talent, but they need to give him a massive bulk of time to just 100% get his body right, because they can't chance it going into 2020. As much as I know they want to give him like a proper full preseason in 2026 and just have him right from the get-go, they can't rush him back. They can't, like, granted, it's 6 months still, but like they can't rush him into it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, as I said, it's just so tough because, as I said, he's obviously the last 2 years, and I think even part of his 2022 was a bit injury interrupted. So as I said, he just hasn't had really consecutive years of being injury free, which is often a bad sign at such a young age. But fingers crossed that he can just come back next year and provide. But it is a huge blow because by far and away, like, he was the most damaging inside midfielder that Hawthorn had that game.
His biggest stretch of games was between 2022 and 2024, with 17, 21, and 16 respectively. With 76 games in total across 6 seasons. So it's been really, really difficult for him to get his body right. So hopefully they can give him a huge chunk of time from this offseason, pretty much from now up until, let's say, don't bring him back until closer to mid-season next year. Give him basically a full year to 100% get his body right, because he's got that insane amount of talent that can make a difference in that midfield.
Well, I said, I think it's just one of those things you got to trust the doctors and they'll know. But yeah, as I said, I would so much rather be cautious because, as I said, there'll be some changes in that inside midfield. As I said, Warpool was sort of on that precipice where he might go. As I said, they've paid through the nose for that back line. So you would think some of their fringier players or, outer players have got to go after the end of this season. So that'll be really interesting. It's just going to be one of those things where I think Hawthorn were very much banking on this being a altogether, really good finals push before we start to readjust, so to speak, some of the young talent, how to give them contracts. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just hasn't quite happened the way I think most people would have thought it might.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jumping over to the MRO side of things, Jai Newcomb was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. It has returned once again. And then Jack Ginnivan was fined $1,000 for an obscene gesture to someone in the crowd. We all know what it was. I think it's very
Yeah.
fair, and he says it's the best coin he ever spent. Because it's always worth it to these players to just give it back to fans that are just saying stuff over the fence.
Yeah, it's an Adelaide crowd. Like, I would bet that it's something that you wouldn't want to repeat to your grandma. So, unless it's an Adelaide grandma,
And you're
they can be
saying
quite
that
feral
as a Port
too.
Adelaide fan, you know that the Port Adelaide fans are just as bad.
Yeah, I don't live in Adelaide. No,
True.
that's what I'm saying. Like, Adelaide as a state.
Oh, as a state,
Man,
as a city,
as a state.
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I
No,
agree.
so they're probably Western Victorians. At least Victorians have a few fun clubs. Adelaide's just a bit too serious.
Adelaide's probably the most serious out of all of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um.
Anyway, talking about happy Melbourne clubs.
Yes. Let's jump over to our next game, our first Saturday game of the round, over at Marvel Stadium with the Demons and the Eagles. And with an 83-point margin, Melbourne win out 21-13, 139 to 8-8, 56.
Yes, an absolutely meaningless game for the neutrals, a nice consolation prize for Melbourne, but a day to forget in the Eagles' history as they confirm their second wooden spoon in 3 years, to the joy of baby tigers everywhere. It was a defensive half collapse for the Eagles, high score off turnovers 71 points, and a high score of stoppage 49 points, and absolutely smashed in ground ball gets. Even though the Eagles were close at halftime, it felt like only a matter of time, and a 10-goal 2-3 third quarter absolutely proved that, as they scored as Melbourne scored 19 of their 20 points from centre bounce in that quarter, as Viney and Oliver absolutely turned on the screws against the hapless Eagles in that time frame. The Eagles also didn't convert very well from their inside 50s, with a pitiful 2 general shots being created, as Ryan and Owies had very minimal impact and 0 ground ball gets or tackles in the forward 50. The final tackles inside 50 being a whopping 22-2 in favour of Melbourne. Meanwhile, the Melbourne Demons made the most of their marking dominance as well, 14-3 from 21 set shots. The Eagles did get 13 marks inside 50, but they weren't too deep and they weren't as dominant as Melbourne, who were just producing a lot and winning a lot in the head-to-head matchups, especially Fritsch on Edwards having a rare bad game, and Petty on Bazzo. Bazzo is not a defender. Unfortunately, he's just going to get pretty much clamped any game he has to play down back.
Yeah,
the Eagles won the hit out by 1.
I mean,
that wasn't what I was expecting, but
that's
that
a
was
little bit of a consolation,
happened.
but you take that.
Yeah. But to no one's surprise, Max Gawn, talking about the centre ground, was absolutely dominant, and Williams could catch up against him. And that's pretty much it. Melbourne have had a few comprehensive wins against lower teams the last few months. So that's good. Means they jump Port on the ladder, which is a consolation. Or I think they do. I'm not sure.
We'll look at that when we get to it. But it's a resounding win for them, but ultimately it really doesn't mean much. For the Eagles, it's pretty tragic. One thing I did notice is that I think it genuinely does. I think Harley Reid genuinely does make a difference to that midfield, because he is pretty much their contested ball player, their clearance player right now.
Yeah.
So they definitely missed him in this matchup.
Player.
Well, yeah, I know, but
it's atrocious that he is, but yeah, they rely on him. Like, as I said, they have a go about his output, his cleanness, and whatever, but they look abysmal.
The funny thing
without him.
The funny thing about this scoreline is that there are only 3 the game prior that we just talked about, the Adelaide Hawthorn game, there are was it the Adelaide Hawthorn game or the one before? It might have been the Adelaide.
Yeah,
Hawthorn.
Adelaide Hawthorn.
No, actually, I think it's the one before that I'm referring to. Maybe.
GWS
Hang on.
Bulldogs.
Let me do quick maths in my head. No, it was
What
the
are you
last game.
talking about, Blazy?
There are only 3 points difference between the scoreline for that game and the scoreline for this game.
3 points difference between the score.
Adelaide Hawthorn was 188. Melbourne Eagles is 185.
Ah, in terms of combined score, I guess.
Yes. And yet, that was meant to be a top 8 matchup, and this was like middle of the pack to the Wooden Spooners.
Yeah, I know we've had some conversations about this, but I don't think Hawthorn are as defensively tight-knit as people say they are.
No, I think on paper they were meant to be the best defense in the comp, but there's surprisingly been quite a few holes as the season's developed.
I pointed that out earlier in the season.
You
they're
did.
very much marking focused. As I said, you play that taller backline, you have to give up stuff on the ground. It's just science. Big man pick up ball slower than little man.
Yes, that is true. That caveman logic somehow works well in the AFL.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, in terms of Melbourne though, like this is a good momentum that they're able to carry at least, hopefully for the next couple of weeks and into their off season, because it definitely does boost morale with even just winning high margin games.
And at the end of the day, like scoring for Melbourne is so important because when you look at their stats, there's some areas. I mean, it was a bit like last year where it's like, okay, it's worse than Prime Demons, but there's still some semblance of stopping teams. There's a bit of defense. The midfield is good until it randomly craps itself once every month. It's just that forward line that's atrocious. And, as I said, to score 139 points, which a lot of teams haven't even got this year. So, as I said, it's one thing they have against some of the more abysmal offenses this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm going to use that as a segue into my individuals, because I think that comes down to Bailey Fritsch finally coming back to his sharpshooting best. He definitely did not start off very well this season, but has come back to being one of the best shots in the competition, as he was previously known for, kicking 4 goals from 17 disposals, 13 of them effective, equating to 76.5% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 6 marks, 8 score involvements, 3 1%ers, and 3 10 meters gained. Christian Salem was prolific in the midfield, finishing with 30 touches, 5 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 9 marks, 4 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, and 400 meters gained. And then Caleb Windsor was very solid with pressure this week, finishing with 16 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 4 inside 50s, 3 clearances, 5 score involvements, 5 tackles, 22 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 383 meters gained. Over on the West Coast side of things, Ruben Ginbey did well in defense, repelled what he could, which obviously was a lot that he just couldn't handle with. But he finished with 15 touches, 10 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 5 score involvements, 4 tackles, 10 pressure acts, 8 1%ers, and 7 spoils. And I thought Ryan Marriage had effective ball movement when they were able to move the ball effectively, kicking a goal from 29 disposals, 23 of them effective, equating to 79.3% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 3 inside 50, 6 score involvements, 4 tackles, 2 1%ers, and 627 meters gained. On the MRO side of things, Liam Baker was fined $2,000 for rough conduct against Max Gawn. I don't know how that works. One of the tallest guys in the competition against one of the smallest guys in the competition. And then Christian Salem was fined $1,000 for tripping Tom Gross.
Absolutely gross behavior indeed.
Agreed.
Yeah, I will say actually, like the Eagles from halfback, I know they still got a lot of points off turnovers, and I imagine that I didn't actually purely watch this game. I watched some of the highlights. I imagine some of those turnovers came from halfback, but they didn't look too bad. Halfback rebounding. It's just everything forward was abysmal.
Yeah,
I thought
kind
Tom
of
McCarthy.
It's kind of similar to how the Giants kind of looked this week. It's like your halfback is okay, but you're just getting nothing up forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to say that McCarthy, Cole, and Duggan is probably a step down between
Oh,
Idun,
obviously.
Ash. Yeah, but I know what you mean. Like, yeah, as I said, I get you. It's just, yeah, as I said, because there's nothing up forward, it creates more stoppages that lead to, because obviously they'll get smashed around
Yes.
clearances and all
Yes, they
that
were.
sort of thing. So, yeah, as I said, it was just, yeah, once Melbourne got it to ground level, they were pretty comfortable.
Agreed. All right. Jumping
Also,
over.
I will say
Yeah,
one
go
thing
on.
we haven't mentioned: Jai Cully, probably his best game in his career against his former side, and joins the rare club of getting his first win against a former club.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh,
I actually forgot that he was playing for the Eagles fairly recently.
yeah, no, it's very easy to forget. Remember, he got picked up over Tom Edwards, who went for Essendon, kicked a few goals before he got hit with injury.
That's
So
right.
a bit of sliding doors there, but yeah. So obviously, um, who was it? There was a actual Port and Richmond connection there as well. I think it was not Mitch Brown. Who was it?
Uh,
I
was it
think
like a?
someone posted it in.
I wasn't a Jay Schultz because I know Schultz won a couple of
Nah,
games for us. That's for sure.
it's like Mitch Morton.
It
That's
might have
it,
been
Mitch
Morton.
Morton. I
Yeah,
think.
it was Mitch Morton. That's so
Yeah.
long
So
ago
again,
now.
I know. Went from Port to Richmond. Richmond beat Port in his first win.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, 2009, I think that was, and that was the last time it happened. So a very rare occasion that, and he played a
The
good game from what I saw.
funny little statistic. There's all sorts of
Yeah,
little quirky statistics in the AFL. Um,
yeah.
all right, let's jump over to our next Saturday game up at the Gold Coast with the Suns hosting Richmond. I'm so glad I didn't actually have the time to watch this game because it wasn't very good, but with an 84-point margin, so the Suns won out 16-11, 107 to 2-11, 23.
And after a couple of OK weeks, I think it's fair to say that this game, Richmond returned to offensive hell. Their two goals coming a few minutes into the third quarter and right before the siren in absolute junk time, preventing two players from outscoring their entire team instead of the standalone King, who was the only player that managed it. But it was absolutely wasteful. Even if they weren't that wasteful, they probably weren't much of a chance anyway. Gold Coast had solid ball movement and contested stats. But this game had the Suns players dominating down back, inside, outside midfield, and spearheaded by the two bands and new contender who's had a very couple of good games out of nowhere, Jai Farah. Come in for a fringe player, a bit of a difference, and is actually been very good. Vlosten literally drowning down back, trying to be a spare man, and responsible for his Gold Coast counterpart,
Mm-hmm.
whilst Collins had a much easier time marking Bolter and doing pretty much whatever he wanted. I will say it was a very good, solid game by Vlosten, but you know what I mean? It was like, it was so hard him doing two things at once, whereas, as I said, Collins was just able to play much more of his natural game.
Yeah.
Richmond mids were okay, outclassed by their opponents. Anderson continues his charge for the Brownlow, and at times Richmond just put no pressure on in transition, as I thought it was very funny that Noble and Joel Jeffrey had only one contested possession between them, both obviously having a real big impact on the game, but no one really got to them. That's just, I know
Yeah.
that halfbackers are uncontested beasts, but one out of, I think it was like 40 odd possessions is pretty low. I think it was Jeffrey that had the one contested.
Yeah, I'm very glad I did not have the time on Saturday to watch this game because when I went back to it yesterday, it was it was not looking pretty from everything that I saw, and I'm just very disappointed in that performance. Like I knew we were gonna have hit a speed bump at some point, despite competing fairly well against Collingwood and having fairly solid matches previously as well, even matches we didn't win. They were still fairly competitive. Um, yeah, I'm so unfortunate that it was against the Suns where we hit the speed bump, but we knew we would have to come
Mm.
sometime. Credit to the Suns. Again, they're still shaping up to definitely play finals for the first time in their
Yeah.
history. which is very, very good for them. I think they've pretty much stamped in their finals chances. Obviously, circumstances preventing random things could happen. It's still all up in the air. But with the way that they're tracking, they should definitely be playing finals. And it's very good for them. Obviously, Anderson, incredible. Absolutely a Brownlow chance. Matt Rowell, still insane and doing Matt Rowell things all the time. The fact that Ben Long and Ben King are still shaping up to be a fairly solid forward line, despite the hiccups that have happened here and there, are looking really good.
A bit quiet, yeah.
Jai Farah coming in, actually changing their dynamic as well, taking away that three-pronged forward line, tall forwards that they were kind of working with and making a little bit of a difference. Was very interesting from Dimmer. I did notice that in the highlights, and there was an article about Jai Farah that I actually read earlier today, which is really cool. And yeah, I think the Suns are just really tracking really well, even without like one or two of their like key players still kind of missing, being Rioli and Took Miller.
Took was back.
Was he?
Played this game?
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so
he just wasn't in the midfield as much.
Mostly just Rioli in that case.
Yeah, well, the question is, Jai Farah playing the way he is, it's going to make for a very interesting, because it's one of those things where it's like, what's his name? Jed Walters plays almost all years, has a few good games, has a few medium games, but Jai Farah could legitimately keep his spot come finals if he continues this. And I know you probably want to see a good game against a more competitive opponent, but it's not like Richmond's backline's normally that bad. You know what I mean? So it seemed to have made a good cohesion.
Out of what we've had to deal with this season, I think our backline's still been our best part, and yeah, it just fell apart against the Suns this week. So it's I think definitely putting the Suns forward line with Jai Farah in it up against a more competitive backline will definitely be a better look at whether this could work going into the Suns finals campaign. But otherwise, it's the next couple of weeks would definitely be a good test. Otherwise,
yeah, exactly. And as I said, apart from Rioli, they really only have Closey to come back in to possibly before finals. So yeah, as I said, so this team, it's pretty set, and it's got a few new names. So like often we're like, okay, the Suns have had an okay injury run. Charlie Ballard probably being the biggest of the people that they've missed. But you know what I mean? It's like, well, they've found. Obviously, I think that Joel Jeffries and Ballard play differently, but they've been able to adjust their defense where, as I said, players, some like Bodie Ullin plays a bit more defensively, and what was I saying? Joel Jeffries plays a bit more as a distributor, which has seemed to work from them. And as I said, so it's going to be interesting, as I said, you'd be like, okay, normally teams like that, they get a few injuries, they tend to fall apart, young team, having it fairly well for most of the season. But yeah, Gold Coast just continue to prove that this is an actually good season. And this is not just like painting the cracks over. This isn't, their best is like miles better than their worst. This is a good, solid team.
And like just to briefly mention it I think it was mentioned in Dimmer's presser last week. You're just giving a lot of praise to Jared Witts for taking a lot of the brunt of the ruck work, despite really pushing, like slowly pushing retirement age, because I think he's like close to mid-30s. He's like he's up there.
He's up there. He's taking the bulk of the ruck, because their next pinch hit out is maybe Ethan Reed. I think he was the only other hit out. Yeah, so he's the only other player that took a hit out in terms of them. So similar to Nankervis too. As I said, Sims and Reed as backup ruckman are two players that you're just like, well, they're there.
You need to get some time into them, but they could work in time.
Like for right now though, it's not like a Riley Thilthorpe coming in. It's not like a even a Shannon Neal, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
two youngish bodies. Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is a good look for the Suns, and if they're able to still keep up this tight competitiveness against teams that are more prone to opening them up, it'll be a real good test to see how they respond to something like that, and definitely solidify their chances of playing their first finals campaign. Let's jump over to our individuals, starting with Bailey Humphrey. He was very clean with ball in hand this week, kicking 3 goals from 10 disposals, 4 of them contested possessions, 4 marks with all of them inside 50, 2 clearances, 4 score involvements, 4 tackles, and 12 pressure acts. Sam Collins was dependable in defence. He came back last week from a long-term injury, so it's good to have him back in there. Finishing with 18 touches, 16 of them effective, equating to 88.9% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 12 intercepts, 9 marks, 5 of them being contested, 7 of them being intercept, 5 score involvements, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils. And then Matt Rowell, he just continued to do Matt Rowell things. He collected 27 disposals, 23 of them effective, equating to 85.2% efficiency, 14 contested possessions, 12 clearances, with 10 of them from stoppage, a behind, 12 score involvements, 9 tackles, and 33 pressure acts. The rising star for this week was also in this game with Ethan Reed getting it. He kicked 2-2 from 13 disposals, 9 marks with 5 of them being inside 50, 4 inside 50s overall, 9 score involvements, and 10 pressure acts. For the Richmond side of things, Harry Armstrong was lively coming back from injury. It was very good that he got through the game mostly unscathed. He kicked 1-1 from 4 touches, 3 contested possessions, and 6 pressure acts. And then Nick Vlauston just repelled what he could, still putting up his hand for a potential All-Australian Blazer, finishing with 20 disposals, 18 of them effective, equating to 90% efficiency, 8 contested possessions, 11 intercepts, 8 marks, a behind, 3 score involvements, 4 tackles, 15 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 3 spoils. On the injury side of things, unfortunately, Jonty Fall suffered a knee injury in this game. I believe it was in the first or second quarter. Thankfully, it's not an ACL. I'm so grateful for that. But he is ruled out for the rest of the season, which is fine. Put him on ice, and we'll get a full preseason into him in the off-season.
Yeah, it always sounds like that when it's like rest of the season and they're like, oh, it's just a 3-week injury. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you always remember.
But it's like we're at the end of the season. We're not probably getting out of bottom 4. Like, may as well just give him the time.
But you're not going to get a bottom 4. I think that's impossible now, isn't it?
With St.Kilda winning, I think that does make it impossible. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah, you're right. It's like, as I said, we'll talk about it obviously in the context of a game nearby, but it's pretty much almost irrelevant how the Tigers season plays out from here. Except for pride and, you know, obviously what the coach wants out of it. But in terms of pure win-losses, they do not really care about any individual result.
No, we're primarily just focused on attempting to play 4 quarters, trying to get through them without injury, and just getting the game time into the kids.
Development.
And the reality of it is, we could still technically win our next 2 games. Is it slim? Yes. But it's still feasible. Will we win our last game? Definitely not. That's against Geelong. But the St. Kilda North games, there's a potential there.
Yeah, we'll talk about how St. Kilda and North have been doing lately because there is a... Yeah, that game wasn't inspiring. We'll talk about that later. But...
Yes. But first, we have another game to go to. The annual Pride game, which I'm very glad that it is still around. I wish the AFL would do more with it, to be honest. Like with the AFLW, how they do a full Pride round. I would love the men's to do that, but they won't do it for reasons everyone knows. But up at the SCG, Swans hosting the Bombers, and with a 14-point margin, the Swans win out 9-14-68 to 7-12-54.
Yeah, and as I said, it was a bit of a pride game, especially for the Dons, because obviously these teams are... Again, Sydney can technically make finals. They would have so much going their way, it wouldn't be funny. But yeah, as I said, for the Dons, though, you know what? It was a miserable fair all round, but they try to make the most of what they could, and that's about where the Dons are. You know, as I said, they've got hardly any of the players they want out on the field. And Sydney obviously are a much better team, but they kept with them. And that was because whilst Sydney had a mountain of possessions and set shots, they kicked a very bad 5-11 from those set shots. From 22 set shots, I should say. Whereas Essendon, with a limited amount, either converted just enough to be in the contest, but not enough to mount a late comeback, as Sydney were stalling in the last quarter. The centre was a big problem for Essendon. Grundy absolutely smashed in the hitouts, and Goldstein did look a bit tired, causing him to chuck young Blackiston in the middle at times as a backup ruckman. And despite winning the clearances, scores from them were very similar in how ineffective an area it was for them. So really, the game came for turnovers. Essendon, as we know, coughed the ball up a bit, as you will see with the young team. And that ended up being the difference between the two. The outside also absolutely killed the Dons, forcing the game primarily to live in their back half, as Essendon were primarily by marking the ball deep in their defence, whilst Swans had much better outside targets like Goulden and McInerney. The final marking tally being 136-42, a staggering -94 differential for the Dons. So really, it was inaccuracy in the second quarter when the Swans had them on absolute toast. That was the only reason for this to be a close margin. There'll be another game that is very similar in this regard. But they still put the pressure on and tried like they did earlier in the year. But unlike earlier in the year, the Dons just weren't clinical enough when they got, unlike that game where they did get that win. But a 1-1 matchup against last year's grand finalists with a buttload of injuries. I think the Dons will take that. It's just one of the rare ones where you're like, considering everything that happened, you wouldn't expect that, the total margin would have been like a net, few points. It would have been like 6 or something in Sydney's favour overall.
Something like that. But yeah, credit to the
Dons won by 9 last time.
Yeah, it was very, very close. But again, credit to the Bombers for playing a spirited game and at least giving it a shot. Again, against a grand finalist of 2024, because Sydney are not what they used to be. And there are multitude of reasons for that. We've gone over them over the season. For them though, like, they want to finish the end of the season strong. I think they kind of know that even though it's definitely not going to happen, it's still an extremely slim margin. They want to try and put on monumental performances in the next couple of weeks to even at least give themselves a shot. Likely not to happen, but they've got to show something. Like, you can't be playing a close game against a team that's basically bottom 4.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest killer, because obviously, like, percentage is now out of the question. Again, as I said, it would be a ridiculous set of circumstances, considering that if they win out, it's 13 wins and below percentage. So they would need some blowouts to go their way, and the Bulldogs to lose out. And it's all just very seeming. They'll basically need 2 teams to lose out to get into the final.
Pretty much. And
it would probably be... And it can't be Fremantle. So it would have to be the Bulldogs plus one of Hawthorn, Gold Coast, or GWS.
It'll probably be looking like Hawthorn if out of that equation. But again, it's less likely than likely.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like point something of a percentage.
Yeah, it's like a point slim. Very slim kind of margin. But yeah, so credit to the Bombers for actually like taking them to task and giving themselves a fair shot at it. And for the Swans, just you need to show something much more decent than this, just to finish out the season. Honestly, like, you want to be able to finish the season on a high note.
Yeah, at this rate, the best they'll probably get is 9th. So, it is what it is. I don't know if they had their first round draft pick. I swear they traded it away, but maybe they haven't.
I can't remember what the draft pick. I can't remember what the trades were in the off season. It's been too long.
I know. As I said, I think all you're happy about is Richmond still have a fair few. Probably looking to be picked 2 and 3 in the draft.
We've got 2 first rounders. I think they picked 2 and 3 at the moment. I don't know what else we have
East
though.
North.
We'll find out.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's North's problem.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump over to the individuals now. Starting with Justin McInerney for the Swans. He was fairly solid overall, kicking 2 goals from 27 disposals, 22 of them effective, equating to 81.5% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 8 marks, 7 score involvements, and 10 pressure acts. Veteran Dane Rampy was all over the ground. He finished with 25 touches, 22 of them effective, equating to 88% efficiency, 4 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 12 marks, 5 score involvements, 2 1%ers, and 546 minutes gained. And then Brody Grundy had another dominant outing, which is unsurprising against this team, to be honest, getting 32 hitouts and 12 of them to advantage, and 39 disposals, 22 contested possessions, 8 marks, 13 clearances are behind, 9 score involvements, and 10 pressure acts. Shout out to debutant Jesse Totoli, who finished with 13 disposals, 5 marks, 2 behinds, 2 goal assists, 4 score involvements, and 11 pressure acts. Over on the Bombers side of things, Andy McGrath had solid pressure, collecting 26 touches, 15 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 7 clearances are behind, 5 tackles, 25 pressure acts, and 441 meters gained. Archer May was also fairly solid, kicking a goal from 8 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 14 pressure acts, 5 1%ers, and 4 spoils. And then shout out to debutant Jaden Nguyen, also the first Vietnamese player to play for the AFL, which is a big milestone for them. Also the 14th debutant for Essendon this season, breaking the record. And he finished with 5 disposals, 5 contested possessions, 3 tackles, 7 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. And just briefly on the MRO side of things, Oscar Smart was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire.
Ooh. These contacts, they're back in force.
Cheeky players touching the umps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not much to talk about. This is a game, like another game that will just be shelved in the forget about this come season review.
Pretty much. So let's jump over to a game that was slightly more exciting because it was actually a top 4 clash. Over at the MCG, it was Collingwood hosting the reigning premiers, the Brisbane Lions, and with a 27-point margin, the visitors, the Lions, of course, won out with a 14-8 92 to 10-5 65.
Yeah, a revenge game that sort of mirrored the last clash where Brisbane got jumped on their own turf. It was a tale of who could supply their team with enough set shots to win, and it was Brisbane behind the young spearheads, Logan Morris and I forgot to put the other one in, but I vaguely remember his name. Henry Smith. That really capitalised, as both teams kept turnovers in the forward half fairly low and struggled to really score off them. So it really turned into a hard nut contest, which absolutely suited the Lions. The Lions' deep defense, I don't think was actually that great. It was just the ball never really broke through dangerously enough to really bother them. As I mentioned, the ground ball and possession wins were way too much in their favour, as the Pies only really won territory in the second quarter, where they surprisingly smashed Brisbane for a period of time. Brisbane did as most good teams do and protected their defense with solid pressure up the ground, bringing the heat to an often pressuring Collingwood outfit. Although a lot of the game was played in each team's forward halves when they could get their system going, Brisbane did actually have some okay back half movement considering the toughness of the contest, and I think Zorko and the Ashcrofts did well roaming around everywhere, plugging when needed. The biggest breakdown that will probably be talked about a bit, considering that Collingwood have lost 2 out of the last 3 games, was the battered Pies defence, which saw more thoroughly beaten by Logan Morris and Dan Houston doing absolutely nothing but giving away free kicks. Maynard also struggled against young upstart Henry Smith, and it just felt all too easy when the Lions got the ball inside 50, as their deeper entries got them 9 shots to 4 within 15. They got them 9 shots compared to Collingwood's 4 within 30 metres from goal, with both teams having a blemish from this range. So really, it was about conversion. And as I said, both teams got similar inside 50s. It's just the Lions could get more and better shots on goal.
Yeah, it's It was a game that really, really showed that Collingwood's defense desperately misses Jeremy Howe and his intercept skills. Because whilst
Mm.
Dusty Moore does do a lot in terms of intercept, he's very, very good at it.
Hey,
He
don't
bounces
be
off of.
our boy Big Stack
I
Billy
love Billy.
also out of that
I do
mix.
love Billy, but Jeremy Howe adds an entirely different look to that defense, and he always
Yeah.
has. It's why
Mm.
it's why everyone loves watching him because he's always been that incredible for them. Even when he was at Melbourne, he was always that good on intercept. But it's
Mm.
the fact that he's been out for a while now, and it's just opened up their defense so much more, and it's really, really been a struggle for them to kind of fill the void that he's actually kind of left. And whilst they
Yeah.
have great other interceptors, it's clearly not working out currently.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just he takes so much pressure because he's a great reader of the ball. You know what I mean? Like when he comes off, like these are often what should be a one-on-one contest, he'll turn it into a free intercept mark. And the flip side of that, because he's gone, Collingwood have had to face a lot more one-on-one contests, especially from intercept generating teams like Brisbane. I know I said intercepts weren't as heavy, but you know what I mean? Is like they know how to have that fast and threatening ball movement.
Mm.
And as I said, they just got more out of their opportunities. It's not like Collingwood were pathetic or anything. They still got shades of their their team plan going. It just felt a lot more muted compared to obviously what Brisbane were able to produce.
Yeah, and like this loss for the Pies, again, and I mentioned this before when we were talking about the Crows, it's really opened up top two. Like they were what 2.5
Mm.
games in front, and now it's what down to just half a game, barely at all. It's
No, they're not in. Adelaide's on top of the ladder.
oh, there you go. Oh yeah, that's right because they lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's completely opened up top two. It's opened up top four, and we'll talk about it
Mm.
when we touch on the ladder. But it's completely changed how the top eight could even look just in general, and
Yeah. I mean,
it's
again,
wild
talking
that
about ridiculous scenarios.
yeah. Go on.
Like, obviously, it's very likely that a 14-win team will miss the finals. There is a scenario where Collingwood miss the finals on 15 wins, which would be ridiculous. It won't happen,
It won't happen, but the
but
fact that it's feasible is
yeah,
is crazy because you wouldn't expect it even if you look at about a month ago where they
yeah.
were still sitting pretty even though the gap was closing they were still sitting pretty on top with very winnable games ahead of them.
It's just one of those ones where it's like, you just wouldn't expect it. You thought, oh, their position's fairly safe. Collingwood, as I said, I thought Freo were getting a good chance of beating Collingwood. I thought Brisbane had half a chance of beating Collingwood, but I wouldn't expect both of those results to be losses. And a loss in their next game would be pretty damning, and they've got a pretty good opposition. We'll talk about that soon.
Yeah. To the Lions' credit though, the fact that they've shown not just the fact that they can still play extremely well on the MCG, as they did on that one day in September last year. They're still very much in contention to keep their premiership defense going. They're looking fairly strong in being able to possibly make it all the way to the grand final. They do have a couple of little holes that they do have to patch up, and that does come from one of their injuries that I will talk about in a moment, where they will miss a player for at least a week. But that should be a pretty easy fix. But otherwise, just making sure that they have that kind of depth to be able to fill those kinds of voids in the meantime is definitely going to be an important factor going into September.
Yeah, and as I said, I think it's also just a good rebound from what was a pretty bad performance last week. So,
Yes.
as I said, they managed to flip the script. You know what I mean? It's like, I think the Lions have done that a lot this season. Like, they've looked like they're about to drop the ball. Whether it be like a string of less than convincing wins or, as I said, random freak losses. They've just managed to get it. So, as I said, obviously one of the weaker percentage of the top four teams, of the top four fancies, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But still a legitimate threat. Credibility taking a minor hit, But I still think they're a very good chance to make a prelim at the very least.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's just move over to our individuals, starting with Logan Morris, who shined on the Hello Turf, kicking 6 goals from 14 touches, 8 contested possessions, 6 marks, with 5 of them inside 50, 2 goal assists, 8 score involvements, and 7 pressure acts. Young forward / ruck Henry Smith, you had briefly mentioned him before, had a fantastic outing, getting 5 hitouts, 1 of them to advantage, and kicked 3 goals from 5 touches, all of them effective, equating to 100% efficiency. 4 marks, 4 score involvements, 5 tackles, 13 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. And then Cam Rayner was great with pressure, kicking 2-2 from 15 touches, 7 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 4 score involvements, 9 tackles, and 21 pressure acts. Darcy Cameron had a solid outing for the Pies. He finished with 40 hitouts, with 15 of them to advantage, and 12 touches, 7 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 5 marks, all of them being intercept marks, 5 score involvements, and 15 pressure acts. And then Pat Lipinski also did well, finishing with 17 disposals, 12 contested possessions, 2 clearances, 4 score involvements, 4 tackles, 19 pressure acts, and 3 1%ers. On the injury side of things, Ryan Lester did go down with concussion, so he will miss next week's match. And on the MRO side of things, Lockie Neal was fined $1,000 for tripping Bobby Hill.
Yeah, wasn't Leicester last week?
Not according to the report. It was this week.
Okay. For some reason, I thought that was last week. But yeah, I think he just didn't have a good game last week. I think that's what I was thinking of. He got pretty smashed up by Bailey Humphrey, I think it was.
Yeah, I do remember like talking about him at some point during that game, but I can't remember what.
Yeah, maybe it was on Ben Long. I can't remember.
Might have been.
Anyway,
let's jump over to our Sunday matches, starting off at Marvel Stadium with St Kilda hosting North Melbourne, although technically, it's a home game for both teams essentially. And with a 9-point margin, St Kilda winning out 11-12-78 to 10-9-69.
Yes, it was a dead rubber game that stumbled its way into a close contest. If you think of this game, it was pretty much Adelaide versus Hawthorn, but a lot worse. It was a very peak St Kilda and North performance. Inaccuracy by the Saints, patches of horrid defense by North Melbourne, and a random bottling in the last quarter, which saw the Saints almost goalless until a freebie 50-meter penalty in dead time on the siren got them a 9-point win instead of a 3 or 4-point margin win. It was a very paradoxical game. It felt like both teams should have had a very easy ball movement as there was no pressure to be cited, but both teams were struggling to find targets under very little pressure. This resulted in some very hit or miss transitions and performances. I think Nas was a bit of a poster boy for this. Nazai Wangani-Malira, obviously.
Yes.
He had a good game, but it felt like either his kicks were turnovers or score involvements. It was very much a feast or famine game for him. Overall, a net positive, but, it's just sort of the way that this game had. Some of the matchups as well were very wonky. Heath gave Comben an absolute bath, but couldn't quite capitalize, scoring 2-3. Caminiti gave Larky very limited opportunities, and yet he still managed to score 3 goals against him. And Zerha and Cordes had very mediocre first quarters, got reported, and then proceeded to have okay games. At the end of the day, though, North absolutely folded in the second quarter after having a very dominant first. And it was sort of a mixed bag because the Saints really should have put North away in that. They had absolute time of possession, forward 50s, should have buckled down and got the win there. And on the flip side, the Roos really should have punished the Saints for being equally as benign. We've talked about how the Roos really only had this game and the game against Richmond to get a win. And the door was wide ajar. But they just couldn't manage anything. And as I said, Saints, got the bounce back from an early good performance. Tried to hand it away, but at the end of the day, managed to get the win in a game that both teams, like the Sydney Essendon, will both forget after the team preview's done. There's not much to be gained from this game at all.
No, but the one thing that I will say, to North's benefit is that they are a much different team with Lucky in that forward line. Like that forward line gels so much better when they have their spearhead, and it's the same. It's most kind of the same for their midfield too, because they're still missing Sherry. He's back next week after his suspension. So there will be a difference for them, but like it really does suck that they've had to go so long with such little resources, either due to injury or suspension, to really kind of show what they can be capable of and what they're growing towards.
I wouldn't put that out. Like, they haven't had that many injuries. Like, they've been playing.
No, like they haven't had that
their
many,
best
but
squad
their best
year.
players going out at the worst kind of times is more so what I'm saying. Like, granted, in Wardlaw's case, he just hasn't really had good form since coming back from injury. Like, this game was probably one of his best for the year, which isn't really saying much. But yeah, like Nick Larkey makes a huge amount of difference in that forward line, and obviously we know Sherry is one of the best rucks in the competition, and just is not helpful to them at all because Bryn Teakle has to take up the ruck work and is not faring as well.
Yeah, but doesn't that just like, because you can't have a team that's like, so okay, all our stars in the midfield, we invest so much draft capital. And at the same token, going, okay, we have to have Tris and Cherry in the team to protect them. Otherwise, they're going to get beaten in the clearances or whatever. They didn't actually win the clearances. Oh, sorry, they did win the clearances by 1, but it wasn't exactly like it was a 30-31 clearances. Both teams scored the same amount from both stoppage and centre bounds. And this is the Saints. They're not exactly a heavy clearance team.
No, they're not.
So, again, one person missing from their midfield lineup, and you can't tell me that that's going to be like you know what I mean? Like it just can't be that big a difference. Like at this stage, it can't be. Like, I know like this is being harsh, and I didn't want to slag on North, but I don't think you can be providing that excuse. Like, that to me, it's just like, it's so, it just so glosses over the big problem for North is just how much they haven't got out of players, like not only just from their mid-tier performances, but from their lower levels. And, you know, I know they've actually had a few injuries and they've had a few players that they've sort of been developing that look okay, but it all just amounts to nothing. And as I said, when St. Kilda produced a big load of nothing themselves, they should have ran over the top if they did have any semblance of growth. But I think this game just proves that they're, you know, they haven't grown this year.
Yeah, no, actually, I do agree on that part. But to be fair, on St. Kilda's side of things, like they just did not get out of second gear at all for this game. It was just horrible.
No. Like, I think if honestly I was going to say like good performance to this game, I would say there was like 4 players that probably had above average. Rowan Marshall, Jack Sinclair, Jack Darling I actually thought played fairly well, and probably Cal Wilkie, maybe Caleb Daniel. I don't know. But yeah, as I said, everyone else was it just seemed like it was plodding along, really.
In my eyes, though, there were a couple of players that I think stood out, and I am going to highlight them, of course, starting with Hugh Boxall. I thought he put solid pressure on for St. Kilda, kicking 1-1 from 12 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 4 score involvements, 8 tackles with 4 of them inside 50, 14 pressure acts, 6 scramble gets, and 2 1%ers. Jack Sinclair was prolific, finishing with 26 touches, 23 of them effective, equating to 88.5% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 11 intercepts, 5 score involvements, 3 tackles, 7 ground ball gets, 31%ers, and 440 meters gained. Anthony Caminiti, despite getting 3 goals kicked on him against Nick Larkey, he stood tall otherwise, getting 8 disposals, all of them effective, equating to 100% disposal efficiency. 4 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 12 1%ers, 12 spoils, and I forgot to add this, but also 100% time on ground. There aren't that many players that you really normally see that get 100% efficiency and time on ground. Although, fun fact, there was actually another one in this game that I did, not this game, but this round, that I didn't actually get to mention. I think it might have been Will Lorenz for Port Adelaide, who also got 8 disposals at full efficiency and 100% time on ground. It was fairly funny.
No, Lorenz had 87% efficiency. It might have been someone else.
There was one. It was someone. I can't
Zach
remember who it was.
Thatcher?
So, yes, it was BZT. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew it was someone. I just couldn't remember who it was. But yeah, that's just really funny. 100% disposal efficiency and time on ground isn't.
Yeah. Sometimes tall defenders, ones that take the safe kicks, get that.
It isn't super common, but it is normally from like your fullbacks that are likely to get it more than any. On the North Melbourne side of things, George Wardlaw, as I had mentioned before, probably played his best game for the season, which isn't really saying much because this game meant nothing at all. He kicked a goal from 17 touches, 13 of them effective, equating to 76.5% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 7 score involvements, 6 tackles, 21 pressure strikes, and 8 ground ball gets. And then Colby McKercher also did good things, kicking a goal from 36 touches, 5 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 8 marks, 3 score involvements, 3 inside 50s, 4 score involvements, 2 1%ers, and 642 meters gained. Over on the injury side of things, Mitch Owens went out with a hamstring injury, and Zach Banch went out with a rib injury. That one is probably a little bit worse it's probably not as bad as it sounds. But he will probably be out for the rest of the season because of it. That's okay. North Melbourne aren't really going anywhere. And then on the MRO side of things, Paul Curtis has been suspended for 1 match for striking Angus Hasty.
Ooh, so nothing for Zerha.
No,
very lucky there.
He was cleared. He got very lucky.
It was only by their sheer luck because it was very bad bumping technique, let me tell you. Yeah, so that's why I was also a bit filthy enough because as I said, 2 of their players tried to rub themselves out in the first quarter when they had to be fair, a fairly winnable game coming up as well. So, yeah, as I said, look, I honestly came off as a bit harsh for North. I didn't want to be like that, but you know what I mean? It's just like, I think you just got to accept, where they are. And as I said, I think it's time to reassess what we think about North's midfield.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I said, you can have all those players that you like. You can say the Sheasel, McKercher thing, but the fact is, North just don't know how to position those players to get effective possession. Because McKercher and Sheasel are both quality. Same with Wardlaw. LDU is probably the other one that's like, I still believe in the, faith of him, even though he's been a bit up and down this year. But they've just have no way of figuring out how to get impact out of those players, which is weird because they theoretically could be a forward half team.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand why they're so trash from the back half, but they should be able to have found some forward link up by now. But yeah, it just seems like, but that can change. Again, the Suns last year were having the exact same criticism of them. Turned it around in a year because they do have the talent there, and you can't give up on that.
Mm-hmm.
But you really got to ask something more from the coaching because, as I said, it's just too long.
Yeah,
they've had this sort of thing.
Agreed. Let's jump over to a team that has a little bit more success, just in general. A game that you probably don't really want to talk about all that much, but we're gonna have to do it. Down in Geelong, GMHBA Stadium, of course, with the Cats hosting Port Adelaide with an 88-point margin. The Cats win out 23-15, 153 to 9-11, 65.
Yes, Port do suffer back-to-back stompings, not only from the Cats, but back-to-back weeks as well. Adelaide to this game, arguably the Hawthorn game too. Again, we thought probably going to be a hard game with all the outs that Port have and Geelong just sniffing for the kill. The first quarter was very respectable in the sense that the Cats were, they were getting a few inside 50. Ports were holding up fairly well. Port got a few things going the other way, and they looked okay. And the second half comes along, and you're like, well, the Cats are getting away from them. They haven't got that much of a lead. It's not that terrible yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the last half would be a complete and utter annihilation. Port's defense just could not cope in the second half. The mammoth 69 entries inside 50 for the Cats,
Nice.
being their second highest for the year
Mm-hmm.
from their gigantic 77 last week. So in 2 weeks, they've amassed 155 inside 50s. Craziness.
That is insane.
Yeah. Primarily, obviously, coming from turnovers, as we talked about. Port's bowl use not being very good, considering that their young players aren't going too well. And on the flip side, when they could get those turnovers, the marking chains made it a lot easier for Geelong to transition the Port, as Port transition for the third week in a row was reaching absolute abysmal levels. They can't generate marks on the outside, and they do long dump kicks on the wing. As I said, Geelong did legitimately struggle, not systematically, but more execution-wise against the trying young Port side early. But as I said, as the game went on, possessions just got more and more damaging. And at the end of the day, there were too many solid ball use just going untouched and unimpeded. Even the other way, the tries for Port had absolute effort become undone. Poor Lockie Jones did an absolutely fantastic job on Cameron, but every time he was either forced to roll over to an opponent or rest off field, Cameron would just slot something unopposed. The same thing could be said about Jack Martin's 4 goals in 6 minutes. There was just no damage coming from Port's clearances. And when Geelong got a quick sniff, it was just bang, 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 bang. And I think what summed it all up is in the first quarter, Jackson Mead in transition boots the ball up Travis Boak's ass because he was asking for a handball way too close to him. It probably highlighted a problem with Port Adelaide, and that is that they don't spread enough. They ask for handballs way too close. They ask for close chains. They don't get enough spread transition. And while it was a funny moment from the old-timer who otherwise had a solid game, it sort of highlighted everything that was going wrong for them in terms of their transition worries.
It kind of just encapsulated Port Adelaide's season as a whole, to be honest.
Yeah, as I said, it was good moments coming undone in the absolute catastrophic way. That actually leading into a Geelong goal, mind you. That turnover. I can't remember who kicked it, but ended up trickling into their forward line and getting converted. So, you know what I mean? An error, half back off turnover from transition that's too close is pretty much, as he said, example A of how to score against Port. You just let Port do their own damage. You know, they'll bring you to the contest. You don't have to worry about, deciding whether to leave your man because your man's taking you to the ball carrier. So, again, it's a problem I've had all year. It's why I think that something needs to happen systematically. Again, I've not got a huge grudge against Ken Hinkley. I do think that the board hasn't done anything in the last 2 years to shake things up and try to, not just bang your head against the wall, hoping to crack finals. I think, as I said, while I'd hope that Port send Hinkley off well, I do think the board deserve all that they get in this fairly dismal season. And as I said, it just shows that, you can't just be doing the same thing in football over and over again. Otherwise, you just fall behind the pack so quickly, and the Cats proved it. They're always reinventing themselves. Again, the way that they're able to set up their forward half play has continued to be absolutely fantastic, and they absolutely roasted Port once they could get their game going.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that their midfield is able to develop multiple facets of how they play as well. Like, it's not just, their forward line rotations, like with the inclusion of Jack Martin floating up there. It's not, their back line with Tom Stewart sometimes playing midfield time, sometimes Tom Atkins floating into that midfield. Like, it's pretty much like it's their midfield runners are often changing the way that they play depending on who they're up against, and so just the way their entire team kind of rolls is they're able to provide multiple looks of how they attack and how they defend, and it's why they're an insanely threatening team to the top 4 and the finals as a whole.
Yeah, and again, they're another one of those weird teams where, as I said, they have a net differential in score from stoppage, and yet they average 13.1 more points than their opponent from stoppage. So again, that weird quirk that they share with both Adelaide and Collingwood.
It's definitely an interesting thing, and to Jezza and Shannon Neal's credits, they are both insanely good at leads. They're both insanely good at picking ball up off of getting ground ball gets. Let me use the proper terminology in this case. And they're lethal. They're effective. Like they don't have to rely on their smalls to do all the heavy lifting on the ground when they're able to do it themselves, even when they are under threat from some of the better defenders in the competition. It's
Exactly.
It's so interesting.
Because when you have and for example, this is probably perfect because Brendan Zerk-Thatcher, fantastic one-on-one defender. He doesn't get beaten too often, has a few down games, but one of his thing is he's a typical bring the ball to the ground sort of defender. And that's just so hard to do against Geelong's backline. Because while I don't think Zerk-Thatcher had a very bad game, in fact, as you mentioned, perfect disposal, accuracy, all that sort of thing, wasn't too beaten one-on-one. It didn't often result in a rebound 50, just because, as I said, he would bring the ball to ground, but then, obviously Geelong have so much threats. We haven't even talked about Stengel and Martin, and they were just able to capitalize the most out of it. So yeah, as I said, it was just one of those things where, it can't just be shutting down the tolls, because the tolls are also good at ground level. They will do the small things to get their smalls connected, but then if you focus too much on that, the smalls get the tolls connected. And then it's all just, you're chasing your own tail trying to defend.
Yeah, it's looking...
You literally just have to defend off offense, which, as I said, Geelong have gotten beaten in, but not against Port. Port definitely a team that's not able to do that.
It's definitely looking like Geelong, Brisbane, Collingwood, and the Crows are the top four threats. They're gonna kind of really dominate this top eight. And with what we've seen from the Suns and the good parts of GWS, and obviously the Dogs who are still trying to vie to get in, and of course Freo, who are probably coming in more underdogs than anything, to be honest, because they've been pretty unpredictable as of late. The top four might be the bigger threats, but we all know that they are defeatable. But I think Geelong are going to be the hardest one out of the four to defeat.
Yeah, maybe. I still think that's Adelaide. But yeah, as I said, who knows? But you're right. It's all these teams could get beaten once, but the difference is it's a lot easier to beat the teams below them twice to get them out of the finals than it is to knock off anyone above them. Collingwood, the only exception, and that would only be if their injuries continued. I think they'll just get back to form once they get their backmen in.
Yeah, I agree. Jumping over to our individuals, I'm going to start with Shannon Neal, as I mentioned before. He was extremely lethal this week. He kicked it 3-1. Obviously, Jezza kicked more, but that's because Jezza is on the hunt for the 100. But I think Shannon Neal had more impact in terms of other stuff he did around the ground. He finished with 15 disposals, 13 of them effective, equating to 86.7% efficiency, 8 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 7 marks, with 4 of them being inside 50, 5 inside 50s, 10 score involvements, 6 tackles, with 3 of them inside 50, 14 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. Max Holmes was absolutely elite, kicking 2 goals from 35 touches, 12 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 7 marks, 9 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 15 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, 12 ground ball gets, and 875 metres gained. And Oyster Mullen played a fantastic role on Zach Butters, completely shutting him down, finishing with 10 disposals, 5 contested possessions, 4 clearances, a behind, 4 score involvements, and 4 ground ball gets. Stats might not say a lot, but he was so important in stopping Zach Butters' role around the ground. One of the best players in the competition, Zach Butters, and to see him just get completely shut down is impressive, because normally he has a couple of tactics.
Yeah, because he is an excellent space creator, but Mullen just, kept on him, and it wasn't like a dirty thing either. It's like he was bullying him off the ball or anything. It was just, it was honestly discipline, It's like, okay, we're going to set up our clearances to where we think we can intercept most of the handballs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, as long as Zach Butters doesn't get the clearance, we know that Port aren't going to do much damage.
Yeah, pretty
And that
much.
was so evident.
Onto the Port Adelaide side of things, veteran Ollie Wines continues to perform, finishing with 32 touches, 14 contested possessions, 8 clearances, 2 goal assists, 10 score involvements, 8 tackles, and 26 pressure acts. Joe Berry was solid, kicking a goal from 12 disposals, 10 of them effective, equating to 83.3% efficiency, 3 inside 50s, 3 score involvements, 2 tackles, 9 pressure acts, and 308 metres gained. And shout out to debutant Jack Whitlock, who finished with 3 disposals, 2 marks, 3 hitouts, 4 tackles, and 11 pressure acts. On the injury side of things, Jace Burgoyne went out with a leg injury. I don't think it's too bad. I don't know if scans have confirmed anything as of yet, but he should be okay. And then Connor Rozee was a late change, going out with illness. On the MRO side of things, Tom Stewart was fined $2,000 for rough conduct against Ollie Wines.
Yeah, and I would say that's like a good lucky thing, because it was bad form, the way he approached that ball. In terms of, he just made the wrong decision. He chose to go in the air to try and smother, but went a bit too far into the contest. And he tried to turn his body his way as much as he could. Managed to do that, and just clipped him a tiny bit. So it was actually good. He tried his best to avoid missing weeks once he realised he was in the wrong. And he ended up just getting fined for it. So
that's good.
A good result.
Good result. All right, let's jump over to our last game of the round over in the West at Optus Stadium, with Fremantle hosting Carlton, and with a 27-point margin, Freo went out 15-4-94 to 10-7-67.
A big game for big men with big ramifications for the Wharfies. But interestingly enough, it was a small task force of Frankie Evans and Jesse Motlop that got Carlton out to an early lead. Despite bulk moments of rain, scoring was sublimely efficient in the contest. Carlton ended up getting an unblemished 10 set shots for 10 goals. So no behinds, nothing falling short. And Freo scoring a solid 11 set shots for 7-4. It was really just Carlton's inability to crack past Freo's defence that got them out of it. As the longer the game went on, Freo were just winning clearances and turning them into scoring opportunities. Despite having lost Young again, he was subbed out for Neil Erasmus. Most of the time, they were very good at the stoppages. Brennan Cox and Ghostface Oscar McDonald were absolutely pivotal in their defensive roles and allowed Jordan Clark to run free on the rebound with less pressure, which was so important, as the Blues did actually genuinely put on pressure, something we have not seen in recent history, and didn't make transition all that easy for the Dockers. But the matter of the fact is, if you're 43-27 in stoppage clearances, the differential just meant that Freo more often than not just needed meterage more than 100% clean ball transition. And with Jackson and Brayshaw getting 8 each, they got the job done there. That being said, I think the game legitimately would have played out differently if Harry O'Farrell stayed on the park, as he was actually keeping Jai Amos very quiet for the first half. Unfortunately, Haynes had to take him on. The matchup didn't really suit him. Haynes was doing a lot more when he was free. And, it meant that a pretty defensive contest sort of favoured Freo. Carlton was still okay defensively. Freo were just shooting the light. Like, there's no doubt about that. But really, it was like stoppages where Carlton sort of let themselves down. But otherwise, Carlton got a lot out of their players. They were just getting a team beaten by a team that really couldn't afford to lose after a disappointing last year. And although I still don't maintain Freo are playing the most perfect football at the moment, they've got a few areas of growth. This is a grit and determination we have not seen from a Fremantle outfit since the earlier inclinations of the Ross Line era.
Yeah, this was one of those games where they really had to kind of, like, not that the conditions were, super bad. Like, I don't think you would know better than I do, but
the conditions were bad. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Carlton and Fremantle were, like the ground kicking was poor at times, but they did really well considering. Like it was a lot cleaner than you would expect. It was just, as I said, it should have been a lot scrappier. It just somehow didn't end up being that way.
Well, the fact that Carlton did put up a valiant effort, despite the fact that what we've seen in recent history, it's been pretty dreadful. Shows one, Freo are able to adapt, and hopefully this is a kind of ability that they're able to keep up, going into finals if they want to be a really serious contender. But two, it's positive for Carlton, the fact that they have found a bit of form again, and it might be something that they're able to continue as a positive sign going into the last couple of weeks of the season. Maybe it'll be a good thing in terms of just more development into the younger players that are currently still playing in the side. Maybe they'll throw a bone to a couple of the players that they haven't debuted yet. Like the Camporelli who hasn't debuted yet. I can't remember which one it is. I forget, but that's okay. I think it's
Lucas,
Ben.
I think.
No,
Ben.
I think it's Ben.
Lucas is banned.
Yes, that's right. He is suspended. That is very unfortunate. But they've still got a couple of weeks to kind of just put a little bit of game time, give a bit of taste to some of the players who haven't really had a chance this season, or just carry a bit of momentum into some positivity going into their off season. But for Freo though, if they're able to continue their adaptability, whether it's by weather or just by play style, they can be one of the serious threats. But the fact that this was close against Carlton for, I wouldn't say for the most part, but for 60%, it's not the best of looks when you got to come up against those top four threats.
I mean, you say that, but I honestly think that's still a pass, because I think
it's a pass.
At the end of the day,
I think like a surefire kind of solution.
Yeah, I know, but Fremantle against sides that have been better, as I said, I've been saying, they've gotten bailed out by their tolls. And maybe that's a bit harsh because this isn't a fluke anymore. This isn't like a run of those 3 games where you're like, yeah, well, they're winning, but I think this is actually no. Freo are designing it so at the end of games they get all their tools involved. They tend to come up good. So I'll give credit there. But you know what I mean? I think this is just the fact that, Carlton tried to still counteract that, still try to play very good at ground level. Obviously, the stoppages is where it sort of fell apart from it. But I do think that because Freo have shown this sort of thing against really good teams, I don't think you can say, oh, well, it's just Carlton and they didn't beat them by that much. I really think that, it's just Freo believing in their system. It's they don't care that they're behind, they work it back in. And I think this is still as solid as win as any. I'll give Fremantle a lot of credit for this one.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I definitely hope that they can at least put a little bit more of a stamp on the next couple of weeks. Just really solidify, well, not just their place in top 8, but they can get a home final essentially, because that's at the end of the day, that's probably what they want more than anything. They're probably not going to make top 4. That's the slimmest of margins at this point. But just trying to finish 5th or 6th and getting that home final should be what they're after the most.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, as I said, it's so weird because, I said Fremantle don't polish off teams, but again, I don't think they just have the list to, they're still fairly young in their forward line.
Yeah.
I will admit, in this game, Shai Bolton had an absolute shocker, which didn't help their ground level game. Murphy Reed kept fairly quiet, and then, as I said, the good thing is their young players do produce enough. Then, as I said, the 2 usual suspects have a bit of a down game, and then up pops Isaiah Dudley, kicks 2 very clutch goals, and provides a bit of deeper forward pressure, and, just looks okay. So, as I said, it's not steamrolly, everything clicks together normally for Freo. It's just enough click together, and they do it so consistently where I'm starting to believe that, again, I don't rate them for going deep in finals, but of all the finals team to just like get 2 in a row from 4 or below. I think Freo is actually probably the most likely team to do it.
Yeah. Out of what we've currently looked at, I think they are probably the more likely candidates out of the rest. But jumping
Yeah,
over,
so of that, we're talking about Fremantle, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, GWS.
yes, of course. The Dogs, obviously, despite the huge win that they've just had, still have a couple of hurdles to go through. But yeah, it's again, that's why this is the big shakeup. Like the entire top 8/9 is still under threat from literally everyone.
Yeah.
But jumping over to our individuals, I'm going to start with Jai Amos, who again was shut down by Harry O'Farrell before his injury. But in that second half, kicked 3 very important goals from 8 disposals. Speaking of, they were all effective, equating to 100% disposal efficiency. 4 contested possessions, 5 marks, 4 score involvements, 4 1%ers, and 3 spoils. Carl Warner was very solid with pressure for Freo, finishing with 15 touches, 4 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 9 tackles, 18 pressure acts, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils. And Luke Jackson continues to be a dominant force in this second half of the season, getting 18 hit outs, 6 of them to advantage, and a goal from 27 disposals, 21 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 8 clearances, 5 score involvements, 6 tackles, 32 pressure acts, 12 ground ball gets, and 2 1%ers. Over on the Carlton side of things, Frankie Evans was very lively. He kicked 2-1 from 12 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 4 score involvements, 5 tackles, and 16 pressure acts. And then George Hewitt absolutely racked up the numbers. He collected 36 disposals, 15 contested possessions, 5 inside 50, 7 clearances, 5 score involvements, 6 tackles, 21 pressure acts, and 399 meters gained. Over on the injury side of things, as we had mentioned previously, Hayden Young went out with another groin injury. It's going to be an interesting conversation to see who comes in for him. Will Nat Fyfe be ready? Will they have to bring in someone else? That's a wait and see. And then over on the Carlton injury, Harry O'Farrell did his ACL, unfortunately. That was confirmed earlier today, that it's, as of recording, that it was confirmed ACL. So that's really, really unfortunate for him.
Yeah, absolutely dreadful news because I have liked his last 5 games. Yeah, that's just a tough one.
Yeah, it's a really rough way to finish out the season. But yeah, there are some positive signs for Carlton, and hopefully they're able to just carry it through to the rest of the season, where they can hopefully do their review. Maybe keep Michael Voss again. That's still also up in the air. But hopefully positive signs for the next couple of weeks for the Blues. All right, let's take a look at the ladder, because again, this is the big shaker. A lot has changed, so I figure it was a good time to take a look. So we will start at the top with the Adelaide Crows officially coming into first position, tied 60 points with the Pies, who are currently sitting second. The Crows sit on 144.1 percentage, with Collingwood sitting at 130.8. Rounding out the top 3 is the Brisbane Lions, only a half game behind on 58 with 112.1 percentage, and Geelong rounding out top 4 with 56 points, a game behind, only a half a game behind Brisbane, of course, with 138.6. So again, they're pretty much a solidified top 4 teams. Freo and the Gold Coast Suns could still take a stab at it, but it's unlikely that they will break in just based on the run home for the next couple of weeks. But
Brisbane beating Collingwood sort of shifted that, unfortunately.
Yes. So like it is still possible, but with just the way that we see the rest of the couple of weeks going, this will likely be our top 4. But rounding out the top 8, Freo sitting in 5th, tied with Geelong at 56 points, but on 113 percentage. The Gold Coast Suns moving up to 6th, on 52 points with 125.1 percentage. Tied with Hawthorn sitting at 7th, also with 52 points with 117.6 percentage. And the Giants also on 52 points, rounding out the top 8 with 111.3 percentage. On the top 9th, of course, is the Western Bulldogs. On still a game behind, my mistake. on 48 points, but with 137.3 percentage. So if they get lucky, they will jump straight back in thanks to their high percentage. To the rest of the ladder, Sydney sitting 10th, 40 points, 95 percentage. Port Adelaide 11th, 32 points, 79.8 percentage. Melbourne move up to 12th, jumping Carlton on 28 points at 95 percentage. Carlton moving down to 13th, 28 points, 92.1 percentage. St Kilda are now also tied with those teams on 28 points, but with only 87.4 percentage. Rounding and now into the bottom four, Essendon 15th, 24 points, 72 percentage. Richmond 16th, 20 points, 65.5 percentage. North Melbourne 18 points, 73.4 percentage. And the West Coast Eagles still with only one win, 4 points, and 61.9 percentage.
Yes, and if you see the icons on screen, you'll know that they have a very tough task at Optus Stadium. But we're not going to start there. Are we going to start with the matches?
Yes.
Now?
We are going to, and we won't touch on that West Coast game just yet, but it's fairly obvious how that's going to end up. But we are going to start with a big Thursday night clash at the MCG, Hawthorn and Collingwood. This is going to be a battle of the defenses because their holes are fairly evident. Will their forward lines capitalize, or will they be able to patch them in time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is... first of all, this is a must-win for both teams.
Mm-hmm.
Collingwood to stop the rot, to confirm themselves as a top 2 contender, because if they lose that top 2 is in jeopardy. Obviously, travelling will be a huge swing in terms of their premiership aspirations. And for Hawthorn, this is to stay in the 8, because obviously once they lose, it opens the door for the Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so again, it's really how clean can the Hawks be, because in a high-pressure situation, it's easier to get those turnovers against, and Collingwood love generating them.
They do.
But if they can break through, that's where the opening is, because as you said, their defense is a bit shaky. So, once it goes through, whether it's ground level, whether it's marking, whether Kalshadia or Mitch Lewis gets back in, it's one of those things where, you can actually see a Hawks getting the win in this contest. Would be still hard. Again, though, it's probably one of the better matchups for them, I think. I don't think some of the forward half bully teams is good for them at the moment. So to be a more generalized, team, it's all right. Yeah, as I said, they just got to bring pressure on the ground, pressure on the tackling. Don't get caught up in too much of Collingwood's pressure on the other way. And if they can work out the handball chains, they should fare all right. But you would imagine Collingwood still has the overall structure to win.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a bit hard, especially considering that this is essentially also a home game for Collingwood.
Yeah, this is the fact that this is at the MCG makes very little difference to both teams. It's just purely going to be based on matchups and coaching prowess as to whether which team will pretty much win out. I want to back Collingwood on this one, just because I think their midfield shapes up better, and they're able to give their forward line better entries. But I think the Hawks could be a sneaky chance at this point in time.
Yeah, I still think it's a 60-40, despite... I don't know, it's weird because it's like Hawthorn. Everyone's like, Hawthorn could miss the finals now, Hawthorn could miss the finals, but they haven't... Their form hasn't been atrocious.
No.
You know what I mean? It's not like they've been going badly. 2 losses, obviously, 1 to Fremantle at home, 1 to Adelaide at their...
They just have one of the hardest runs home, and we went over this in our bonus episode the other week.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, I wouldn't say that Hawthorn are completely out of it, but they will have to dig in deep.
Yes.
That is for sure.
100%. But let's jump over to our Friday night game next, over in Geelong, GMHBA Stadium, of course, where the Cats will host the Bombers. There's not much we really need to say on this one, is there?
Yeah, it's unfortunately slightly more efficient forward system Geelong is compared to Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
Away, probably not going to get anyone back. Yeah, it shouldn't look too good. Again, just try and play a forward half game for Essendon. The more you can try and dominate out of centres, the more you can keep the ball in your forward half. The less damage that Geelong can do back at you. But once they will, they'll just take it end to end and score, and this shouldn't be a close game at all.
Yeah, I expect Geelong to just absolutely thrash the Bombers. As much as I want to hope that the Bombers can play a spirited game, um, and just try and make it a good contest. I see Geelong just completely outrunning them in every facet of the game, pretty much.
Yeah, good day to have a social life on that Friday night.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll be donating. I'll be doing my regular plasma donation that night, so I might be just stuck at home having to watch this game. Either that, or I'll just pass out at my desk.
Yeah, I mean, either's about the same thrillingness.
But yeah, we
Talking about,
don't have to say too much more about that
yeah.
one. But Saturday games might be a little bit more interesting. Starting at the MCG, where Richmond will host St Kilda. I will be boots on ground for this game. I might have my best friend with me. We have never actually been to a Richmond St Kilda matchup together, so it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out if she does come along. But otherwise, regardless, I will be there, and I just hope it's a very interesting contest. I think this again. I've already spoken about this, but I think this is one of the two games. Again, this one and the North one, of course, that we have a chance of winning.
Mm.
I think it being on the MCG gives us a better edge. But again, St Kilda overall are a better team in terms of just what they've shown recently. And you
Yeah.
kind of would expect them to continue the form that they've recently had against us. But it being the MCG could make a bigger difference because it is a wider ground, a bigger ground compared to Marvel, and it could make a difference in terms of how they run and how they transition.
Yeah, it's just going to be weird because it's like, if, I mean, what? St. Kilda's played maybe two and a half quarters of good football over the last 8 quarters, and they've come away with 2 wins.
Mm.
This would be for 3 in a row, but they don't look that threatening. But at the same time, they've been getting the job done. I think it's just, you go back to Richmond, and I think it's just being honest, and it's about bringing that pressure.
Yeah.
Because again, their backline should be able to. St Kilda's forward line was very sporadic. So if Richmond can actually generate a few turnovers from more mediocre entries, they might go a bit. I think their inside midfield should match up okay. I don't think Naz will have as easy a time as a pure midfielder as he did against Melbourne and North Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Richmond are an okay chance, but it's like maybe a 65, 45 sort of thing.
Yeah, we're not.
Not 60, 35.
We're not favored for a lot of reasons, and that's perfectly
No.
fine. But there is 100% a chance.
Yeah, it's like St Kilda. It's sort of weird. Like, I don't have much faith in them, but they're sort of getting more towards where they're actually.
Mm.
Another win will get them to 8, so that's about roughly where they are. But they're still roughly St Kilda enough to lose to Richmond. That's
Yes.
pretty given.
Pretty much. All right, let's jump over to the next Saturday game up at the Gabba, where the Lions will host the Swans in a grand final rematch.
Yeah, and who would predict that this would turn into, one of the more contests?
Mm.
I will say though, Sydney did make this a very good contest last time. Before we thought we knew that they were pretty bad, they really had the Lions on toast before eventually slipping the lead. They lost by 4 points at the SCG. But obviously this being played at the Gabba plays a lot more in favour. And I think the Lions have, over the course of the last half compared to the first half, played a much more consistent brand of football. So Obviously, backing the Lions, I think one of the areas where Sydney should be able to compete is the outside. And obviously, depending on whether Oscar McInerney comes back, the ruck in the middle. So it'll be an interesting midfield battle. I don't think Sydney's forward line is good enough to capitalise on Brisbane's, as I said, maybe not that spectacular defence. But yeah, as I said, Brisbane going the other way should be able to rack up a big score. That's the biggest thing. I think the midfield might be even. I just see the Lions getting more from their entries, and because I'm really lazy and I just want to think of them, I think Brisbane will score 50 plus from stoppage in this match. That'll be my weird prediction for the week.
Yeah, all right. We'll lock that one in. Yeah, I think Brisbane should have the clear runway to take this win. It'll help solidify their top 4 chances and give them more fighting power to push for a top 2 position, which they definitely want because they want that home final.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, you want a spirited effort by Sydney, but it's really hard to believe that the players don't believe that they're not going to make finals at this point.
Yeah.
You want to see them try, but the Lions just have so much more to play for. It's just whether Sydney can be spirited, and they definitely can't play as inefficiently as they did against Essendon.
Yeah, 100%. All right, jumping down now to Marvel Stadium, where Carlton will host the Gold Coast Suns. And with how Carlton kind of performed last week, it was with a very spirited kind of game. I think they could make it at least an exciting contest, but the Suns should 100% take the 4 points away from this one.
Yeah, I think for Carlton, it's about running with them. Again, like Freo, Carlton's got a bit from stoppage, but they definitely scored. They definitely received a lot of punishment going the other way. And as we know, the Suns, 2 of their biggest things is scoring from stoppages has come up or linking up their midfield to the forward half. And obviously scores off turnovers, which Carlton still love to turn the ball over a fair bit. So it's all about, just tinkering, providing enough effort. Because we have seen the Suns shocked a bit when you can actually apply the pressure on them and stole a bit of their outside movement. So if they can do that like they did against Fremantle, there's definitely signs. But yeah, as I said, unless they can completely shut down both stoppages and outside runs, it's hard to see Carlton actually threatening to win this game.
Yeah, I don't see
there is an avenue, but it's just unlikely.
Yeah, agreed. As long as they can at least show a bit of competitiveness and a bit of a strong contest, it'll be a good entertaining match. Otherwise, yeah, the Suns should take the win pretty convincingly. I expect Matt Rowell to have another blinder of a game as per normal. Anderson to add to his potential repertoire of a Brownlow. Although Patrick Cripps, could still make a little bit of a play to shut him down in some degree of that. But we shall see. Let's jump over now to the Adelaide Oval, where Port Adelaide will host Freo.
Yeah, look, it's tough for Port Adelaide. Again, we've talked about how much that they're sort of falling apart. But matchup-wise, it's, a bit of taken and given a little. Obviously, stoppages, if they're as bad as they were, as I said, if Port Adelaide can't defend against the stoppages, Freo will just walk away with this. I do think the toll matchups, and it will depend if, as I said, everyone gets off on the park fairly well, but they do defend the free tolls fairly well. I think that against Tracy, Amos, and Voss, they don't have too many worries. And in fact, I think even at Optus Oval, that wasn't the real reason why Fremantle got away from them. I'm not sure if any of them particularly went off the chain. I think what's his name might have kicked a few goals. I'm just going to quickly check.
Go for it, because names are blinking on me right now. I think Tracy kicked like 2 at minimum.
No, it was none of the tolls. No toll kicked more than 1 against him. Patrick Voss kicked 1.
Oh, there you go.
and Amos kicked one. It was Murphy Reed kicking 4 goals against them
That's
that really killed
right.
him. So
Sneaky little
yeah,
surprising bit of play.
so again, if the Smalls don't have a good game, that's really where Port get in it. Because Port can't defend their Smalls rather than the Tolls. So, as I said, there is a bit of an avenue. Obviously, Bolton, I would say, is the other one that can really rip the game open. Had an okay impact against Port in that matchup. But again, if it really would take Port actually dominating from the clearances to set up their game, because their forward is pretty awful. Georgiades is going to have a pretty hard time. Obviously, they're so focused on him. And, as I said, he probably can kick 3 or 4 goals, but it probably won't be enough to keep up with Fremantle.
Yeah.
But this game, I know Port's been absolutely thrashed the last 2 games. This is one where I think they can actually legitimately redeem themselves. Whereas I think the other ones have just been up against too much offense. Whereas I don't think Fremantle is as balanced in that offensive department, and I think Port can at least nip the margin a bit. I don't think they'll win. Like, this is probably a 20-point loss, but I don't think they'll be as disgraceful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd like to see if the rematch up against Port's tall defenders and Freo's tall forwards is gonna try and tell the same story. I'd like to see a little bit more out of Freo's talls, especially Amos. Amos kicking 3, even though his partner did go out with an ACL. Not the best outcome, obviously, but 3 goals is still good for Amos. And hopefully,
who went out with an ACL?
No, O'Farrell. The game just gone.
O'Farrell. Yeah. His defender partner. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So like maybe seeing him try and have a little bit more of an impact again, whether if he's able to like force a mismatch in on matchups or something like that, it'd be really good to see him just have more of that impact. Again, Freo's midfield has always been pretty fantastic this second half, so I'd like to see them just continue to do what they're doing. I trust Freo's defense as well for the most part. Again, there's still a little bit of holes in Freo's defense, but I'd like to see. I think they'll do a fairly reasonable job on Port's forwards. But overall, I think Freo should take this.
Yeah, no, I think they should get the job done reasonably. I'll still tip Port.
I know you will.
Again. Till the end of the season, at least.
I mean, to be fair, I am probably going to go Richmond for this one, so it's a fair assessment.
And then Richmond has a fair bit more chance than Port, probably on paper.
True. But a team that does not have a chance on paper is one of our first teams in our Sunday games. Over at Monica in Canberra, of course, the Giants will host North Melbourne.
Yeah, the Giants have been pretty comprehensive winners in the last few matchups. And again, as much as, as I said, Bulldogs were like, oh yeah, like Giants could match up well against, struggling. A team that struggles a bit to move it on the back half. Again, North are, as I mentioned, are a tier down from that. Again, I think North have to take advantage of the fact that they're probably going to get the ball forward. They're going to probably win the clearances. They might even win the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're really going to win, and that's what I said, it would have been such a letdown if they lost both Curtis and Zerha. But again, it would really take a very solid effort by their forward line, and it wouldn't just be lucky. It would be everyone that needs a good game. But I mean, there's a slight avenue there. But yeah, Giants, they really need to get the job done on this. They've been so up and down in form. Had some very good wins. Had some pretty average losses. I think they just need to make people forget that by just slamming home another win.
Agreed. They need to make up a ton of percentage to try and keep the Dogs out. For one, which they should hopefully do in this game. The ruck battle will be interesting because Sherry should be back. But I don't think that won't matter all that much in terms of the midfield kind of aspect of it, because Toby Green should be back from his suspension. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it'll be hopeful. Hopefully, we'll get to see the Giants patch up that hole that Jack Buckley has left at this current point in time. Um, Otherwise, yeah, they should get the job done pretty convincingly.
Yeah, you'd think so. I still don't think they need percentage. I think that most scenarios, like GWS finish above Hawthorn, but there is that rare scenario where you said
Yeah,
they might,
the
if they
percentage
don't
won't hurt.
overtake Hawthorn own percentage, they risk dropping out the 8.
Yeah, just accruing more percentage won't hurt anyway, and this is probably the best game for them to actually do that. So
Yeah, but if they lose, they'll lose percentage, and they need to lose. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So, to finish below Hawthorn, that's what I mean.
yes, of course.
But again, that could change if Hawthorn do win over Collingwood. Then it might mean that percentage matters a whole lot more than what I'm saying.
Yes. All right, jumping over to our next match over at the MCG with Melbourne hosting the Western Bulldogs.
And, I'm still confident in the Western Bulldogs, but this does scream a tiny bit of a trap game. There are certain things that I don't think the Bulldogs will like about Melbourne. They did win one of the matchups last year. They comprehensively beat them before Melbourne decided to fall in a screaming heap.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as I said, it's really going to be, can Melbourne score enough? We've seen them score against mediocre defenses, and the Dogs are verging on mediocre. Their midfield shouldn't really be absolutely spanked by the Bulldogs. So, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to be taken away from the Bulldogs, because I still think they'll win, but I would not rule out percentage. And I think this is one of those ones where you have a bit of a nervous sweat, because you wouldn't want your finals campaign to unravel against Melbourne of all teams.
Yeah, this
but
is a
I
game.
do think it's
that is a must.
A bit closer than what people might give credit to.
Yeah, I think Melbourne have shown enough to where they can be competitive against teams above them at this point in time, even though they still have been a little bit hot and cold in some areas. But they always seem to play the Dogs really close. Because I think both teams actually match up fairly well against each other, especially in their midfields. But yeah, the Dogs, this is a must win for them. Pretty much every game is a must win for them if they want to make the top 8 and play finals. But Melbourne could completely surprise them.
It's actually sort of the opposite. It's whoever gets the momentum win. The last games have all been around 50 points.
Oh yeah, true. It's always a momentum shift somewhere in the second or third quarter, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's Melbourne, if they get their defense set up, the Bulldogs are and then if the Bulldogs get their forward half press going against Melbourne, they're
yeah, it's a bit like
that's
that.
my analysis.
It's a fairly decent analysis, but yeah, this could be a game that could get you on the tipping. If you're going to tip the Dogs, it could end up being a D surprise. If you tip the Ds,
if you need
could be a
tip out of nowhere that you think no one else is going to tip, I would probably pick this.
Yeah, I think so.
But I'm still thinking, I put it in the same category of maybe Carlton beating the Suns. There's avenues, but it'll take a lot to go right.
Yeah, agreed. And then over to our last game of the round over at Optus Stadium. It's 18th versus 1st, with the West Coast Eagles hosting the Adelaide Crows.
Eagles were bad defensively against Melbourne. Now they're up against one of the most potent forward halves of the comp that also love to generate turnovers, which they... And, there's no real reason this game will be close at all. The last encounters have been absolutely dominated by Adelaide. Eagles don't like them as a matchup. Not much more to say. They haven't scored under 100 against them, so that will be the biggest win for the Eagles if they could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Adelaide should win comfortably.
Yeah,
That's
think
100 points. They haven't had a 100-point loss to them recently. At 99.
This could genuinely be a 100-point loss. But it depends on if Adelaide decide to either just play in second gear or play as they play as a dominant force.
Oh, I think they will to a degree. Like, they'll rest anyone that they need to. They're in that position now where they can. I don't think they'll be resting on their laurels. I mean, obviously, best percentage in the lead behind the Western Bulldogs. Oh, sorry, no, Geelong's over them. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Best percentage in the lead behind Geelong, and then it's the Western Bulldogs. But yeah, as I said, they should. Yeah, there's no real reason for me to think that this will be a anything but an absolute mauling.
Yeah, I completely agree. This should be a convincing bloodbath. But if I feel like if Adelaide don't put them to the sword and push that 100-point margin, not that they necessarily need to, because again they don't necessarily need that huge amount of percentage unless they just want to keep Geelong off their back. That yeah, they should win with so much more comfort than what people might think.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing of the Eagles is like, how much can they score with them? You know, if they're going to have their defenses making the most of their score going the other way, because it's not like the Eagles are a scoring team. Obviously, Richmond are dirt bottom, and then it's Essendon. Yeah, but as I said, yeah, they're going to have to make the most of their opportunities because they are still pretty poor in that regard.
Agreed. But that brings us to the end of the episode. Before I've completely finished wrapping up, do you have many plans on for your week ahead?
I don't think so. Should be a pretty quiet one. So, yeah. Honestly, I don't think I do have anything on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually the same. I don't have much on this week either.
Yeah.
Other than our potential bonus episode for the
Yeah, I
start
was
of
about
the
to say, looking forward to
AFLW.
the W starting. Yeah.
I'm trying to find a special guest to come join us, someone who's a little bit more knowledgeable than I am, obviously, of the AFLW. But it might just end up being us. We will let you all know, of course. But other than that, that brings us to the end of episode 70. So thank you all so much for coming and hang out with us this week. Thank you for liking and subscribing on YouTube and Spotify, of course. I will have socials up this week. I'm feeling so much better than I was last week. Even though my voice is still a little like, you know, I'm much better than where I was. I managed to get a stream in last week on my Twitch, which was very nice. I'm still continuing my playthrough of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's been a lot of fun. It fits perfectly within the universe, and I'm very glad it's canon because it's really, really good. But otherwise, yeah, I should be a little bit more active this week over there. Otherwise, it's pretty chill across the board. So, with that all out of the way, thank you all so much. We will love you all and leave you all, and wish you all a very good week ahead. And we will see you either in the bonus episode or next week for episode 71. So until then, take care.